My name is Liam Ridgway. I'm Gumbaynggirr from Nambucca Valley on my dad's side and Waka Waka from Sherburgh on my mum's side. I reside and work on Gadigal country, where I also co-founded my business Nuckanyagu, NGNY for short, and charity Indigitech. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands we're gathered on today. We're blessed in this country to have so many diverse environments, from the beautiful blues and greens of our coasts and the bush, through to the yellows, browns and the reds of the sands and the deserts as we move to the centre of the country. These are ecosystems that we've nurtured for 65,000 plus years by my ancestors from the clans all across this great country. This land is the giver of life, and we're all inextricably tied to this ecosystem. So it is important that we all nurture it. If we look after it, it will then look after us. As my ancestors did for thousands of years, they passed on to us a thriving and beautiful environment and the knowledge to maintain this. It is important for us to play our role in the cycle of life and to nurture the lands we all work, live and walk on, and so that we can pass this on to our kids and their kids. As people, we are part of this ecosystem. It is important that we also acknowledge and support each other. It's about practicing a way of being and a way of thinking. We're all connected to each other through this land we live on and the ecosystem that we're a part of. So take care of it and take care of each other. Today I talk to you from Gadigal country, where I've resided for the majority of my life. I'm not a traditional owner of the Gadigal people, so today I'm doing an acknowledgement. Firstly, I'd like to pay my respects to the Gadigal people, their elders past and present, who have cared for and nurtured these lands, seas and skies that I live and work on. Most notably, Gadigal land encompasses the city of Sydney and many surrounding suburbs, which a lot of us call home. Secondly, I want to acknowledge all elders from all the nations, past and present. I also want to acknowledge my Gumbaynggirr elders, past and present, who have nurtured and supported me in my journey. Lastly, I'd like to pay respects to all my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters here today, and also acknowledge their elders, past and present. Hope you all have an amazing NAIDOC week, and stay safe and look after each other during these extraordinary times. Darren Dunn, thank you.
Good morning and welcome to Arts Going Digital. It's wonderful to have so many of you joining us for this special broadcast, and I'd like to start by thanking Liam Ridgway for his acknowledgement of country. I too would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Yuckalett Willem clan of the Boonwurrung, where I am today. I would also like to acknowledge my First Nations colleagues and our panelists today, and all First Nations people present online as we gather here in this digital space to talk about arts and culture. Acknowledging our First Nations people have been talking about arts and culture for over 65,000 years. As we come together today, I'd like to acknowledge that many of our artists, creative workers and organisations are again dealing with the impact of further disruption caused by COVID-19, while many others are still recovering and rebuilding from the impact of the pandemic. We extend our best wishes and support to all of those who work in our creative and cultural industries during this difficult period. We hope that you are able to get back to work and reconnect with your audiences again very soon. And speaking of connecting, we'd love to hear from you during today's show. We have two panels coming up and the chance for you to ask questions using the Interact Live app, which I hope you have downloaded. To join in with the live Q&A, open the app, press the Interactive Sessions button, then choose the panel you wish to engage in and click through to submit your question. It's as simple as that. Of course, connection is at the very heart of our conversation today, and in particular, how Australian artists and creatives are sharing their work through digital channels and platforms. Whether by design or necessity, we've seen a great digital acceleration over the past year or so, and you'll hear many terrific examples today of how our artists and performers have used digital tools. Going digital has helped keep our artists and performers connected with their audiences, enable them to keep creating work and hopefully earning some income as well. It's testament to the resilience, innovation and enterprise of the people who make up our creative and cultural industries that in putting together today's program, we've had such an abundance of material to work with. I'm looking forward to hearing more from our panelists about how Australians are creating and connecting online. Our vision is for a digitally enabled and thriving arts and cultural industry, which is a driver of the Australia Council's new digital culture strategy. We're looking forward to working with artists and organisations along with industry and government partners in delivering this strategy over the next 3 years, and we are excited about what we can achieve. I'm delighted to now introduce the Minister for Communications, Urban Infrastructure, Cities and the Arts, Paul Fletcher. The Minister has a keen interest in how we progress digital opportunities for Australian arts and culture, and there are obviously a lot of synergies across his broader portfolio of responsibilities. Minister, a warm welcome and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Adrian, and it's great to be with you and with so many people who are joining this forum today digitally from around the country. Can I also acknowledge the traditional owners of all of the lands on which people who are participating today are located and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. This has been over the last 12 to 15 months a challenging time for the arts sector, as we know, but at the same time we've seen some extraordinary innovation, and the forum today is a really exciting opportunity, I think, to compare examples of best practice and also to talk about how we can shape the future direction of leveraging digital technology to make the arts more accessible. So in my brief opening remarks, I really want to touch on three things. Firstly, the way that digital technology allows greater accessibility. Secondly, the way that COVID, for all the challenges that it has brought, has also been in many ways a catalyst for reimagining the way that people engage with the arts, the way that the arts are delivered. And thirdly, I want to touch briefly on what some of the directions forward might be. And of course, out of today's discussions, I'm hoping and expecting that we'll get lots of great ideas coming forward. But if we start with the many ways in which digital technology can make the arts more accessible. Everybody I meet in the arts talks about wanting to get more people to see their shows, to see their works, to make what they produce more accessible. But as we know, we're a very big country and it can be hard for everybody to get a chance to go and see what's on offer. And this is one way where clearly digital technology means that people in remote and rural areas, for example, can be seeing really terrific work. And I know we're going to be hearing a number of examples today of how that's been working just over COVID and how that's really sparked new ways of doing things. But it's not just audiences in regional and remote Australia. Some interesting data suggests that audiences with disability have found that digital technology lets them participate more. The most recent Audience Outlook Monitor survey by Pattern Makers in March of this year, more audiences with disability reported that they were participating in online arts and culture. And so that's one of the many ways in which digital technology can help make the arts more accessible. Of course, there are many other possibilities that digital technology provides. The National Film and Sound Archive is doing great work on digitising the back catalogue of analogue videotapes and other things, and in turn meaning it's now much easier for people to go and look at old TV shows, old movies. And the way that digital technology is revolutionising arts practice, particularly, well, one area that stands out is filmmaking. Some of the latest technology with Australian companies like Industrial Light and Magic, Rising Sun Pictures and so on. Animal Logic and Rising Sun Pictures are two good examples of companies using the latest technology. But the way that film sets in particular are changing is really remarkable. And of course, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School has had a lot to do in making some of this new technology available through training opportunities. So I think we can all, from our own experience, see lots of ways in which digital technology can help make the arts more accessible and reach more audiences and allow in our arts practice to people to do new and innovative things. My next proposition to you, I don't think it's a controversial one, and Adrian, of course, touched on it in his remarks as well. COVID, for all its real pressures and difficulties it's created, has also been a great spur to innovation, and there are plenty of examples. Melbourne Digital Concert Hall, I know, are presenting later in this forum, but what they've achieved is quite remarkable, and not only making the arts accessible online, but also coming up with an economic model with the project, I'm told, generating 1.25 million for Australian musicians and arts sector workers in 2020. And it's interesting, and I'm sure they'll talk about this more, that many of the people who, in their subscriber database, now some 5,000 strong, have indicated that they're now attending more concerts than they were able to because it's easier to do so online. Just over the weekend, I had a chance to look at the digital version of the MTC's recent play, Sexual Misconduct of the Middle Classes, and it was a very easy experience. And I was struck by how much it felt like being at the theatre. So it wasn't just like watching a movie or a TV show. It was definitely a theatre experience, but at the same time, something you could see from the comfort of your own home. Certainly under our RISE program, we've funded a number of projects to try and leverage the take-up of digital technology across the arts sector, and in particular, Australian Theatre Live received RISE funding of nearly $1 million for their project, Capturing Theatre for All Australians, partnering with several major Australian theatre companies, expected to create 758 jobs and a total attendance of almost 200,000 anticipated. So again, new opportunities being created through digital. One of the other areas that's really struck me is the way that the Indigenous arts sector has responded so effectively to COVID, with arts fairs like Darwin Aboriginal Art Fair, Cairns Aboriginal Art Fair, and so on. Desert Mob, all of them adjusting in different ways, and in turn able to get their content, their product, their art to bigger and more diverse audiences. In some ways, COVID has made audiences more receptive and potential purchasers more receptive to engaging online, and each of those art fairs and many others as well have, I think, responded in a very flexible but innovative fashion. As part of our support, we announced another $7 million through our Indigenous Visual Art Industry Support Program pretty early in COVID hitting, and I've been really pleased to see the way that the Indigenous arts sector in particular has responded, and the numbers are quite impressive. DAF, for example, reports that their 2020 online event involved participation from 69 Indigenous arts centres and 1,335 artists, and resulted in more than $2.6 million in sales. So if we can see the way that digital technology, broadband, makes the arts more accessible, if we can see the way that COVID has spurred innovation and has got a lot of organisations looking at new ways of getting their product, getting their content to audiences, then I think the third question is, where do we go from here? How do we build on this? When we're through COVID, and notwithstanding the latest issues in Sydney, we should remind ourselves we've now got over 9 million doses of the vaccine administered, the vaccine program continuing to grow strongly. And so I think we can have a degree of confidence that we are going to get through this and we're going to return to normality. The question then is, for the arts, how can we build on what's been achieved with digital through COVID and use the capabilities of digital technology so that arts organisations, artists, performers can do what they do even more effectively, reach more people, reach bigger audiences, and indeed innovate in their practice. There's clearly a priority that the Australia Council has set on that, as Adrian has touched on, and I certainly look forward to the continuing work that the Australia Council is going to lead. Separately within my portfolio, I've established what's called the Australian Broadband Advisory Council, which is looking at how to leverage broadband, and particularly the fact that the National Broadband Network is now accessible to around 12 million premises, around 8.3 million premises are connected. And they're looking at in particular segments. And one of the segments they've chosen is the arts segment. How to better leverage that wide availability of broadband. The NBN has embarked on some significant partnerships with arts sector organisations like Sydney Festival and Bangarra, and there's also a partnership involving Regional Arts Australia and the NBN for Artlands 2021, a very important conference. One of the other areas I think that's a major priority for the future is building on the great work that has been done over the last year or so in the Indigenous arts sector. How can we continue to use digital technology? I've asked the National Broadband Network to do an audit of the number of remote communities which have an arts centre supported by the Commonwealth Government, but which are not connected to the NBN. And there's quite a number of those centres. So there's a job of work ahead to get those connected, because when an arts centre is connected, that means the opportunity to, for example, directly connect with potential buyers in New York or London or Sydney or anywhere else, Wagga, is much greater. And the opportunity to have artists being interviewed, talking about their work, doing all of that online, I want to see more of that being done. We spent a lot of taxpayers' money on the NBN, and particularly those NBN satellites, which cover all 7.7 million square kilometres. And if there are Indigenous art centres that don't have good connectivity, I want to see that addressed. Reasonably soon, we expect to release our National Indigenous Visual Arts Action Plan, and that will look at that issue, amongst others, to see how we can use digital to help continue to build the extraordinary success of Indigenous visual arts. So there's a range of directions ahead, many great arts companies and organisations, many performers, many artists doing extraordinary work and leveraging digital. This morning's seminar, I'm sure, will produce some great case studies. It's a terrific opportunity for an exchange of ideas and experience, and I'm confident that participants will come out of today with some new ideas, but also with an even stronger sense that this is a really exciting direction for the Australian creative and cultural sector. We've done well in it, and I think there's much more we can do. So thanks everybody for participating, and I look forward to a very enjoyable and informative seminar. Adrian, back to you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I recall it was very much your idea that we bring the sector together to have this forum and discussion. You asked the Australia Council to host it to see how we can advance even further into digital arts and culture. Thank you for your remarks. Thank you for setting out some very important directions for us and for your support. So, time now to get the conversation started with our first panel. And a warning for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers that the following panels and presentations may contain voices and images of deceased persons. Leading our session on digital business is Executive Director of Regional Arts Australia, Ros Abercrombie. Over to you, Ros.
Good morning, and thank you, Adrian. Good morning, everybody. As Adrian said, I'm Ros Abercrombie, the Executive Director of Regional Arts Australia, and I'm dialing in from Wurundjeri country of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present from all the countries in which we're all dialing in from. Regional Arts Australia believe that gathering matters, and we believe in the need to redefine gathering and to integrate delivery approaches and across multiple platforms so that we can redefine how we work and how we connect across art forms, across communities, and across landscapes. This session, which is entitled Digital Business, we'll be bringing together a fantastic panel of 7 speakers presenting 5 different case studies from different art forms and from different communities. They'll be discussing how artists and organisations have both created and introduced new digital business models, how they've revised existing digital business models and been able to take them further, and what they've learned from transitioning business models into digital spaces, and importantly, what the opportunities are and the challenges ahead as we continue to work through digital capabilities and capacities. As I said, there's 7 speakers, there's 5 case studies for each demonstrating digital innovations and platforms and connecting artists, practices and audiences. I'll just give you a sense of who's speaking, and the way this will work is that each speaker will present for a couple of minutes, 5 or so minutes, and then we'll bring everyone together at the end and facilitate a question and answer. So there'll be ways to interact. The panel is made up of Kathy Cummins and Dora Griffin, who are both the manager and the chairperson for Wurundjeri Aboriginal Arts. And they'll be speaking to us as a dual experience of a way to use technologies and promote arts and preserve culture across country and across various different initiatives from their Arts Centre in WA. Then we'll hear from the Executive Director of the Australian Ballet, Libby Christie, and Libby will be invited to speak around the ballet's TV live streaming model, but also the emerging issues around performers' digital rights. Then we'll speak to the co-directors of Melbourne Digital Concert Hall, Adele and Chris, who, as the Minister mentioned, have been doing some extraordinary work in 2020 to support musicians and sector workers in presenting concerts through digital platforms. Then we go to dance, and the Sydney Dance Company's Executive Director, Anne Dunn, will talk to us around their virtual studio and their streaming model and how they've generated various different online dance models and modes in that world. And then bringing us and wrapping the conversation up, we go to literature, and Katrina Menzies-Pike, the editor of Sydney Review of Books, will talk about their new digital initiative, The Circular, but also talk around how they've actually continued to build what was already an existing digital platform for the literature world. So as I said, each panelist will present to their case study, and then we'll weave the conversation together. We would love you to be part of today's conversation, and as Adrian said earlier, please submit your questions via the event app, which is Interactive Live app. Click on the Interactive Submit button and select this panel, which is the Digital Business panel, and then ask your questions. And we will try to get to as many as possible at the end, and I'll be able to facilitate those questions for you. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our first speakers and very much welcome Kathy and Dora to the screen, who will talk us through what they've been doing and how they've been managing their digital innovation. Welcome, Kathy and Dora.
Hi and good morning. I'm the manager and Dora is the chairperson at Wurundjeri Aboriginal Arts, which is situated in Mirrawong country at Kununurra in the remote East Kimberley, and we are a community-owned Aboriginal arts centre. The centre was started by Mirrawong and Gadjabang elders to retain and share culture following Narangani law, so that our children's grandchildren will know their culture. It is a place for community to come together to feel good in understanding and passing on culture through the arts and to build Aboriginal enterprise and employment. We work with approximately 100 artists and proudly employ 15 local Aboriginal people as arts workers, operations assistants and cultural tour guides. In March 2020, when COVID lockdowns were beginning across Australia, 65 artists and family members from Wurundjeri Arts made the decision to return to community outstations to keep vulnerable artists and elders safe. Every week, the Arts Centre staff who stayed behind in town prepared and dropped off food, art supplies and iPads to each community. These communities had limited or no internet and mobile phone range. Using iPads, artists and family members filmed and photographed themselves as a communication to connect with the outside world, sharing and documenting a positive regenerative story of art and culture. Slide. So essentially what happened is the drive was to tell a positive story about the engagement of artists back on country. Dora herself was at an outstation with her family in lockdown for quite some time because they were on the Northern Territory side of the border. Merowong country straddles the border. So Dora might want to share a little bit of the importance of being on country and having an opportunity for artists and families to share culture. Slide.
Hello, my name is Dora Griffiths. That's my mum Peggy and my grandson Kaisa, where we went out, I think it's about 50 k's into the Northern Territory. It's just about 2 kilometers back into the WA. We had no phone connection, no reception, and we had to drive to the Keep River National Park, which is in the Northern Territory. It's a wildlife park, and use the telephone booth to call back to the art center or call other family members. That was about a 25-minute drive.
So I guess at that time, we didn't have internet and digital was a tricky thing. The iPads, however, told an amazing story, and in this particular photo, you can see the importance of elders passing on culture to young ones. And so that was the gold, I guess, that came out of returning families to community. Slide. We had a chat to the WA Museum, so Bullabardit, and they commissioned a video that is now at the WA Museum, and that was kind of the start of our digital journey. These fabulous photos that artists and their families took, beautiful videos talking about country, talking about culture, and that was how we began the journey. As artists started returning to the Art Centre, we were also concerned about the lack of tourism. We depend on tourism for a lot of artists to generate sales and income. So we worked out some solutions. We started showing bits of videos that we'd made and inviting audiences to participate online. We presented artist talks and we did exhibition viewings by appointment. So that started garnering a bit of an audience. We made a lot of friends this way and continued to share, I guess, a really positive story of what was happening in the Kimberley. Obviously, there were lots of Zoom meetings, and we were also lucky enough to be working with the extraordinary people in the industry, the Darwin Aboriginal Art Fair, Tanandi, and Revealed, who all went online and secured lots of sales for art centres across the country, ensuring that artists were able to generate income. We had previously made a few digital animations, and these we used to, again, show through online invitation to audiences, and that seems to have generated quite a following. We now have 12,000 Instagram followers and 12,000 Facebook followers. So we're quite proud of that. And that has begun to generate not only important following in sales, but more importantly, an important following in what's happening culturally in the community, generating opportunities for younger artists, some who are great Facebook posters themselves. So our journey started with no internet and a few iPads, and we're now working on a QR code project, and the QR code will be on all our merchandise. Dora is a fabulous textile artist, It will be attached to her textiles. Those textiles are being made into garments, which will be shown at the Country de Couture at the Darwin Aboriginal Art Fair this year, possibly online. And the QR code is also part of another project. We've installing a cultural storytelling garden at the Arts Centre, and this is to provide opportunities for artists to earn income by creating art installations as part of the garden. The QR codes will then tell the story of what plants we have in the garden. We'll video collecting bush foods and bush medicines, and build a record or a document of traditional knowledge that will then be able to be discovered in the garden, with the intention that that will be really important for children's grandchildren to learn about their culture and share that knowledge into the future. Of course, it will also be an opportunity for others to connect in through our website to have a look at what we're doing here. I guess in terms of business, we've certainly changed the way we operate as a business. We've had to increase staff in order to generate the requirements of online sales, packaging, freight out, ordering, and we continue to generate opportunities that can connect artists with the outside world so that they can have a profile and earn income.
Thank you.
Slides. And that's our garden project QR code, which will at some time be available with lots of information. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Kathy and Dora. That was, what an amazing way to start the session. I was like, I want to ask you so many more questions, and I've made some notes around your QR code. But firstly, I actually want to congratulate you. That is quite an extraordinary story and an amazing achievement to both, as you say, to work through the challenges of digital connectivity, but also to utilise some of that soft, hard infrastructure to really do some extraordinary work. And some of the notes you made on the followers, the increase in followers, and also the increase in your business model is to be commended. So congratulations, and hopefully we can talk some more over down the session. I would now like to actually welcome Libby Christie, the Executive Director of the Australia Ballet, to talk to us around what they're doing at the Australia Ballet. And Libby has been working as Executive Director since 2013, but has a huge amount of experience across the sector for some time. So welcome, Libby.
Thanks, Ros. It's lovely to be with everyone today. Slides. So if we can go to the slides, and I'll just talk to everyone and explain our experience at the Australian Ballet. If we can go to the next slide, please, because I'd like to acknowledge that the traditional owners of the lands that I'm joining you from today are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'm at the Australian Ballet Centre in Melbourne. Next slide, please. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about the Australian Ballet's experience going digital. Can we have the next slide, please? Thanks. I guess the first comment I must make is that when COVID struck, the Australian Ballet had quite a lot of digital experience already. We've used digital tools and strategies to improve the efficiency of the organisation and increase accessibility for audiences for a number of years. We have a customer engagement strategy based on our CRM system Tessitura so that we can segment our customers on the basis of value. We use digital marketing and audience engagement strategies. And importantly, we've developed our own box office and sales channels and an in-house record and broadcast team. We've been recording live performances for around 13 years and producing digital content thanks to a record and broadcast agreement we have with our artists. And we've been distributing through partners such as the ABC, Foxtel, SBS, Cinema Live, and we have digital products including DVDs, now out of date really. We've distributed on Foxtel, SBS and Cinema Live. Once a year, we've represented this part of the world on a 24-hour live stream annual event called World Ballet Day, which has reached 500,000 viewers around the world. Now, this experience stood us in very good stead when the pandemic hit. Next slide, please. Between March and December last year, we cancelled 146 main stage performances, which affected 200,000 plus audience members. We generate more than 60% of our annual income from ticket sales, so our revenue from performances last year was down an eye-watering $32 million. It was really a very significant financial crisis for the company. We were sustained by JobKeeper, thanks to the Australian government, from donated tickets, philanthropic gifts, salaries sacrificed by all our staff who went on reduced wages, and most importantly, the company's financial reserves. And as we took a deep breath and said, what will we do next? We decided that our key priorities were to keep our dancers together and in good shape, and to stay close to our audiences, to reward their loyalty, and to bring them back to live performances just as soon as we could. Next slide, please. So we pivoted to doing everything digitally. Our dancers took class and worked at home with their ballet coaches every day online, and that kept them connected with us and fit and strong. And to keep our audiences close, we developed a new product, At Home with Ballet TV. This was 17 seasons of cinema quality classic Australian ballet productions that we had in our archives, which we offered free to view for all of our ticket holders. Each season was available for 2 weeks, and we just like a normal ballet season in the theatre, and we developed additional content to support each release, interviews with the artists, Q&A sessions, and they were very successful. We had around 100,000 viewers, and we included a philanthropic ask in all the communications about our at-home seasons. We received a very generous $3.4 million in donated tickets, so we reckon many of our audience members appreciated these digital seasons. We also converted our ballet classes to digital, and we offered At Home with Studios from May last year. That's 3 classes every week for beginners, intermediate and advanced students, and we did charge for these. They were $25 per class, and they proved popular, and we sold over 3,000 classes. And finally, we also converted our program for emerging choreographers to a digital format for emerging choreographers created works under COVID restrictions, which we premiered online to global audiences via the Australian Ballet's YouTube channel. But, next slide, please, the big but. In 2020, we'd relied on our archives and pre-existing digital resources and recordings, which I have to admit had been very costly to develop. Each recorded production that we'd created in the past cost us around $200,000. So as we planned for 2021, we assumed that audiences would be cautious to return to the theatre. We assumed there might be lockdowns. We assumed there might be restricted audience capacities. Unfortunately, that was all true. And so we knew that that meant we'd be faced with another year of significant budget deficits and ongoing dependence on our financial reserves. And so we urgently needed to find a way to generate ticket income and to minimise our financial losses. And that meant that our free service At Home with Ballet TV could not continue. So could you click on to the next part of that slide, please? Thank you. So instead of free ballet seasons, and thanks to some RISE funding, which was essential for this, we've been able to develop a more cost-effective, ticketed broadcast solution to keep our audiences close and to find more audiences, and most importantly, to generate some box office income. And we call this Live on Ballet TV. Through Live, we'll offer 5 ticketed live stream performances this year using a cost-effective content capture and distribution methodology rather than the very expensive previous approach we'd used. We're enhancing and differentiating Live as a product with some value-added content, exclusive live interviews and commentary during the performance, and behind the curtain insights with dancers preparing and warming up, It's a bit like you'd see on a live screening of a football match on the weekend when the football match is actually playing, but you're watching it at home from the comfort of your lounge chair. And so we'll generate all the excitement of the live performance through those interviews and behind the scenes shots. And we're selling live for $25 a ticket. So next slide, please. Not surprisingly, there have been a few challenges. With live streaming, we can't keep any of the content that to exploit in future use. And our rights holders, our dancers and other rights holders have been very cautious about this approach, and they've only given provisional agreement for us to do this for a 12-month trial. There've been some quite complex website development processes we've had to go through to integrate FiveStream, our streaming platform partner, with Tessitura and our CRM system onto our website so we could limit access to people who've bought tickets. This diagram here on this slide, which I'm not going to go into, you can rest assured, and I won't try and explain to you, just shows that this was quite complicated. And yet, as yet, live isn't profitable, and the ticket sales have yet to cover the costs of doing all this work and setting it all up. If we continue with live streaming after this pilot, we'll need to reimagine and renegotiate our record and broadcast agreements with all of our artists, which is another challenge yet to be overcome. But in spite of all of these challenges, and after only one live stream, we think we're onto something. We sold over 1,800 tickets to Summertime at the Ballet, which was our first live stream earlier this year. And interestingly, a third of these tickets were sold to overseas viewers. So we realise we've created a new audience for the Australian Ballet with live. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I guess the question we ask is, what's the future like? Has our COVID experience changed our thinking about digital? And the answer is absolutely. In future, we won't think in terms of digital projects. We're going to embed digital as a way of working and performing in everything we do. We're going to increase our efficiency using the lessons we've learned. We're digitising all of our assets. That's what this DAM project's all about, digital asset management. And we're working in partnership with the National Film and Sound Archives team to do that. We haven't been able to hand out cast sheets at the performances we're having this year because handing out paper in theatres isn't COVID safe. So we've pivoted to digital cast sheets with an embedded QR code so that people in the theatre can know what they're about to see. And we've added a lot of interesting new content through those QR coded digital cast sheets. We're working on improving our live streams and with new content distribution partners. Next click through, please. But I have to say it's great, but it's not easy. And that's the message I wanted to give everyone today. The most important thing is to think about why you're doing this. It is expensive to go digital. So we've had to be realistic about why we're going digital and what the benefits are we're aiming to get from our digital activities. And our thinking is that we must go digital to be competitive with all other sorts of entertainment. We must go digital to be efficient, to build our brand and our reputation, and to continue to sell our performances to audiences who can't or won't yet come back to theatres. But we're realistic. We're not going digital to build profitable income, as yet not, at least not yet. We're building income, but as yet it's not profitable. So we need scale. And finally, we've learned that we can't do it alone. In spite of the experience that the Australian Ballet had built up and our resources, to go digital has required a very different skill set and expertise and partners and support from what we need to perform live. But in spite of the challenges, the learnings we've had, we will continue to transform and go digital. We know that we have to. So thank you very much for your interest today. I'm happy to take questions later. And to finish, I thought you might be interested in a very, very short glimpse into what going digital has meant for the Australian Ballet.
you, Libby.
Thank you, Ros.
Thank you. That was fantastic, and I think you're from listening to you there, you're definitely onto something. It looks and sounds amazing. Developing those new audiences and through live. And I think there's a couple of things just to pick up from there. Is there was a sentence last year in one of the conversations we were in that said, "Don't lose the digital," and I think that's coming through in what you're saying. And the other thing also coming through is to work together and to collaborate and to learn. And we're working in spaces that we may not all have the same skills or languages in. So I think that there's a lot to take from what and to learn from what you're doing. So thank you very much. In the nice sort of segue into collaboration, I want to introduce our next speakers, Adele and Chris from Melbourne Digital Concert Hall, who come to us as musicians and arts managers and PR specialists, and who work together to deliver what is an extraordinary offering. And I would just also like to shout out in the spirit of the collaboration and not working alone. Both Adele and Chris have been fantastically supportive of Regional Arts Australia, and when we looked at taking Artlands online and our hybrid model and talked us through and helped us sort of work out what that model should be and how we could start to think about delivering it. So it's that sense of sharing and exchange, which I think is so important. So thank you, you two. But yeah, over to you to talk to us and talk us through all of the amazing things you did with Melbourne and are doing with Melbourne Digital Concert Hall.
Well, good morning and thank you. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands that we meet today digitally and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Well, to tell the story of Melbourne Digital Concert Hall, on the 24th of February, I received a text message from my colleague in China to say $2.5 million worth of our contracts had disappeared. The mental health and the effect that had on my family, as 90% of our income dissipated literally within a text, was incredible. On the 17th of March, I was giving my son a bottle at 4 a.m. in the morning, scrolling through social media as one does, seeing this same effect happening on all of Melbourne and all of Australia's artistry. It was something that was shocking and something that was very, very scary. I called Adele and said, we have to do something about it. We have to be able to support the smalls and the mediums, those that didn't have access to digital platforms already and had to be able to support them until JobKeeper came and then beyond. It was something that we were very passionate about because we wanted to make sure that it was high-class artistry, high-class video, high-class audio, but we also wanted to make sure that it was a paid stream because as a cellist, could you imagine if I was at Melbourne Recital Centre and I performed for an hour playing Dvorak and then there was a tip jar on the way out? There would be an outrage, and we wanted to make sure that digital was absolutely no different than the traditional world. So I called Tim Kelly, who was a dear friend of mine at Fivestream, and he was a friend of mine at Melbourne University. I called Kauai and Warwick, and who said, absolutely, we'll give you a piano for as long as you need. And I called the Athenaeum Theatre and Greg Hocking, and they said, yes, absolutely. Though honestly, I believe Greg thought we'd probably be in for 2 years rather than now 15 months. We put together the concerts, and from the 17th of March until the 27th of March, where we launched. 27th of March, we had 4 concerts. We raised $18,500 for artists, and also importantly, those who aren't on the front cover of the brochures, the people that we know that doesn't work without, the stage managers, the techs, all of those very important people. And we had a 6,500 people instantly online community. And we knew that something very special was going to happen. To date, we've raised just short of $1.5 million, or should I say, we've enabled artists to earn $1.5 million on our platform. I think the psyche of saying artists are earning rather than being given is a very important one, because as artists we want to practice, we want to share our artistry, and we want to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. It was very obvious that that was an important element when we sent an email to a colleague of ours who was a single mum with 2 children and said, thank you so much for performing. Please send us an invoice for $4,500 from your recital. And she called me, burst into tears and said, that is the difference for me being able to pay my rent for the next 3 months or having to move myself and my 2 children back home with my mum. And at the age of 35, that would have been a very psychologically different thing. We've been able to support 1,000 diverse artists and performed now over 420 concerts and very much going strong. It was interesting, however, that we started for the artists, but it was the social impact and the community that actually needed us as equal as the artists. Adele.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, indeed. As Chris has highlighted, what began as a crisis response in need to support artists around the country has grown from a few concerts in Melbourne to become a national platform. And in the process, we've discovered a community of well over 20,000 people who now join us regularly online to watch performances. And we receive hundreds of messages every week from those people who live regionally or who have health issues or caring responsibilities that might prevent them from attending a concert otherwise. So as Chris has highlighted, our focus has been very much on soloists, on small ensembles and on those who perhaps might not be eligible for JobKeeper or who otherwise cannot afford or do not have the means to establish a platform of their own. And right from the start, we have felt that that collective impact and that collaboration that Libby also touched on have been incredibly important. We feel that in order to shift consumer behaviour and to make paid ticketed streaming the norm across Australian society, we really need a communal platform. We need to get together as arts organisations, and we need to ensure that all artists and all audience members who would like to enjoy live stream performance have access to the technology and the means to do so. So there we were, having established this platform, having focused on numerous world premieres, featured emerging artists around Australia. Thanks to the Rise Fund and to the Australia Council for the Arts, we will be continuing this year and presenting 300 concerts around the country. And what has also become evident to us is the importance of digital technology in safeguarding our arts organisations in an uncertain COVID future. For example, just recently, the Australian World Orchestra was due to perform in Melbourne. We went into lockdown here in Melbourne, but we were able to pivot and to stream their Sydney performance instead, enabling them to reach that Victorian audience who otherwise would have missed out, but also reaching many hundreds of people around the world who were able to get online and buy a ticket. So that was incredibly exciting for them and for us. We, as Minister Fletcher pointed out earlier, have discovered an enormous regional audience who we didn't really know was there in those numbers. Well over a quarter of our audience now online is based regionally in Australia. And excitingly, we've gone from about 2% to almost 11% of our audience overseas. So fans abroad are tuning in greater and greater numbers to enjoy these performances. So what Chris has pointed out, of course, is that the artists themselves must come first in the equation, that we must find a way, as Libby has also said, to make it possible and financially viable to showcase our artists across the country on a national platform in order for them to also make an income. We must work together to effect that shift in consumer behaviour, because it's not very efficient or effective for each arts organisation on their own to go out there and to try to create their own digital platform. If we work together, we can do that far more cost effectively. And importantly, we must tap into this incredible resource that we've been given, that is the internet. We as arts managers and as arts leaders have a duty to shine a spotlight on the work of others. That is our primary purpose. And we've been given the opportunity through the internet technology and the NBN that exists for us today to make that spotlight greater than ever and bigger than ever on behalf of our performers. And we think that the future is very exciting indeed. And we look forward to exploring what we can all achieve if we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you, Chris. Fantastic, and as you both said, a very exciting case study and very positive way of, as all speakers have been so far, a very positive future focus of where we can go and what is ahead of us. And again, really great to hear the artist-led and the social impact-led models coming through there. So congratulations. And actually, just on another note, to hear you talk about regional audiences also growing as well as overseas audiences and the national audiences, that again just brings together that sort of whole of ecology approach that we're all trying to work within. So very great. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Anne Dunn, the Executive Director of Sydney Dance Company. And Anne's been the Executive Director for, since 2010, but has over 20 years experience in performing arts and festivals across Australia and internationally, and will bring a wealth of experience to this conversation. Welcome, Anne.
Thanks so much, Roz. So yeah, Sydney Dance Company during COVID was, like for all of us, a really challenging time. As we could see COVID coming down the line, we looked at our kind of business model and went, what are we going to do here? We, like the ballet, have a full-time ensemble and wanted to make sure our dancers were looked after and so on. But as well as our full-time ensemble, we also deliver a very large open class program. Normally in any given year, we delivered that open classes to around 75,000 people in our studios. So we, as we could see lockdown coming, took the steps to really quickly move that online. And I'm going to just take you through a few slides here. And really, within about 5 days of the lockdown happening, we launched Virtual Studio. So Virtual Studio was taking our classes out of the studio and onto line. We redeployed our dancers to do that with us, as well as when JobKeeper kicked in, we were able to keep quite a few of our casual dance teachers on. So we took a kind of really quick to market, lo-fi, minimum viable product approach with our Virtual Studio classes. We decided to charge for them because we knew that as people were going to lockdown, they'd really need activity, they'd need connectivity, they'd need, you know, those kind of rituals and routines, and dance is so great for mental health. If you can just, next slide, thanks. So over the course of 2020, we sold 80,000 tickets to our virtual classes. We priced them at around $10 to $12 each, depending on packaging, and what we looked at was making it as seamless as possible for people to access it. So we used our existing ticketing platform that we'd been using for our face-to-face classes and integrated that with a Zoom delivery model. So here you can see a little snapshot. We requisitioned our artistic director's office and set it up like a little home studio there. We really wanted that experience to be about what everybody was going through at that point in time, so very much a home base. We knew connectivity was important, so if you could just go to the next slide, thanks. Each Friday, we hosted a Feel Good Friday dance party. So $10 a ticket. We were averaging around 300 people a week joining in for a kind of big mass dance party with kids and families and so on in lockdown across the country. And it was an extraordinary kind of connectivity and sharing experience. As well, of course, as the classes, we do have the performing ensemble, and we really wanted an artistic response. So if you could go to the next slide, thanks. So during lockdown, our dancers were in their homes, you know, rehearsing and doing Zoom classes, and Raf, our artistic director and choreographer, was in his home. But, you know, artists will be artists and wanted to respond. And it was really important for Sydney Dance Company to find an artistic response. And from that, Quattro was born. Quattro was a series of 4 beautiful short films that we did in collaboration with the Sydney Symphony. Next slide, thanks. Which really sought to reflect the moment that we're in. And if you just go to the next slide, you'll see the gorgeous Diana Doherty. So we had 4 exquisite artists, 4 dancers and 4 exquisite musicians. They each rehearsed alone in their homes, and then we brought them into the studio where one day we filmed the dancers, and then the next day we filmed the musician, and then they were put together afterwards into 4 short films, which were released 1 per week by both us and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. Those films, the Quattro films, have to date had over 200,000 views. And for us, it was a really important step in kind of keeping connectivity with our audiences, in keeping connectivity with our philanthropic audience as well. But it was also a gift, an artistic gift to societies that were really going through really traumatic circumstances. We really wanted people to have this beautiful, uplifting thing. You'll notice here, if you just go to the next slide, each of these were filmed in a box that was 4 square meters, so really reflective of those lockdown examples that we're all in these constricted spaces and these, I don't think we've ever been so spatially aware. Just next slide, thanks, on that one. And so each of them was a partnering of a dancer and a musician, and they were beautiful, beautiful works, which you can still see via our website. Each segment of our business, we looked at going digital. So the next slide will take us through what we did with schools. We have a national touring program normally and international, but alongside our national touring program, we normally deliver an education program. So we took the opportunity to go, well, how do we use this moment and reach out? And so we took our education program online. We delivered over 205 education workshops across 2020 to 42 towns across the country. And what was really interesting about that is that we actually reached a much larger number of towns than we would normally be able to physically visit. And we were able to do a deeper engagement because each town we went to, each school that we visited, we actually did multiple workshops over a period of a term. So kids were able to connect with our dancers and our teaching artists time and again and actually have more embedded learning with them. And as the borders started to open up and we started national touring again, we actually then went and visited some of those schools face to face. So we've built this kind of longevity of relationship through a hybrid delivery model. We once things started opening up and we were able to get back outdoors a little bit. If you could just go to the next slide, please. Sorry, one more school one there. We then went to, we partnered with the New South Wales Department of Planning, Infrastructure and the Environment for their inaugural Festival of Place. We'd all been spending time outdoors in ways we probably hadn't before. You know, the daily hour or two of exercise became a very, very sacred thing for all of us. And we created a series of films called Dance Locale. These were filmed across 5 sites across Sydney. If you just go to the next one. It was this incredible moment where the city was kind of empty and we could create dance in these public spaces and really reflect on what is a public space used for and how do we occupy it, but actually share those digitally. And the next one, I think, became a bit of a postmarked tourist card for Sydney. You know, the Opera House forecourt abandoned and empty was an extraordinary opportunity and moment to film these. So Dance Locale, there were 5 short films. We also filmed one out in Wagga when we were able to get out to a regional centre again. The Dance Locale films have been distributed digitally and they're for free. They really were about reach for us and about connectivity. And I think one of the earlier speakers talked about that, being really clear about why you're doing digital. So for us, some elements of our digital program were about revenue and employment maintenance with the dance studios, but some of them in terms of the film was also about connectivity with audiences and growing our reach. As things evolve, they always do. When we went to market with our virtual studio, we were really, really quick to market. Over the course of the following months, lots and lots of people started doing what we were doing. And so we had to keep evolving the product to stay in front. Recently, we have just launched on demand. So if I can just get next slide, thanks. So dance classes on demand. We moved away from a live streaming model where we had a quite heavy burden of kind of overheads in terms of teacher, virtual studio technician, and customer support person. So 3 people per class. And we were at the height delivering 70 live classes per week. But as the studios opened up and the dancers went back to their normal work of being back on stage and the studios were full of face-to-face classes, we started to look for another model for the classes. And so on demand has been born. Thanks very much also to a support from the RISE funding program. We've invested in some research around this. So we partnered with the UTS MBA graduates who did some research around kind of audience demand and what were the motivators and drivers for this kind of consumption. And like many of my other speakers here today, you know, it was about accessibility. It was about reaching audiences outside of Sydney, people who might not normally come to the studios or be able to, or feel confident walking into a dance studios. So On Demand is our latest offering. We only launched it a couple of weeks ago. So it's streamed dance classes, pre-recorded streamed, and it's based on a subscription model. There has been some challenges along the way. Music rights is an ongoing challenge, and that's one of the things that I think, as all of the arts look to go digital, artist rights and music rights are things that we need to keep working through. And, you know, there's a significant investment of time and expertise in there. And there's also a lot of variability in how all those things play out. Just next slide, thanks. So what we can see here is kind of from your home to our studio to your home. So this is just a series of marketing images. But as I said, this launched 2 weeks ago. I think we've got just under 500 subscribers to this at the moment. And our price point had to change. Our research showed us that to have ongoing penetration into the market, we needed to find a cheaper ongoing price point. So we needed to get the cost of delivery down from the way we were doing it live, and thus On Demand was born. So we're looking forward to seeing how this plays out, but we've certainly got ambition for it into the future. Next slide, thanks. Now, final image there, and it's an interesting challenge trying to find sustainability for this part of the business and then looking at other parts of our business, the future of those. And I think one of the things we're doing at the moment is Sydney Dance Company is being a pilot organisation for the Australia Council's Digital Strategist in Residence program, which has been a really interesting process in that it's allowed us to stop and pause because we launched into all of these digital things very, very quickly. They had been in our strategic plan, but I think the plan anticipated we'd be doing them in 22 or 23. And as the Minister reflected on, COVID made us bring that forward very quickly, and it did make us innovate very quickly. But in so doing, we've also had to find a moment to stop and pause and look at our back-end systems and assess whether the level of digital maturity we have across the whole of the organisation is consistent. And what we've seen is that there's a bit of lumpiness within the organisation. Some elements of what we're doing are very, very integrated and very forward thinking, and other elements we need to do some back end work on, bringing our finance systems up to date so that they can connect with different revenue streams through different digital platforms and so on. So it's been an incredibly interesting and incredibly exciting journey, and it's not without its challenges because I think, as Libby said, expertise in digital is not something that inherently has sat within live performance companies, and we've had to innovate and stretch around that, and it's certainly making us think about our staffing structures going forward and how we embed digital into every element of our business going forward. Thanks, Roz.
You quickly again to say the name of your company and GNY for me.
Yes.
Sorry, there's lots of noise going on. Thank you very much. That was fantastic and very exciting, and some beautiful slides there. And I don't know how I missed the Friday mass dance class. I'm like, I might have to catch up. So that was beautiful.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Yeah. And as you say, just some challenges ahead, you know, and how we look at broadcast and artist rights and music rights, and a few people have mentioned that, but also some really exciting innovation across your company. Congratulations. I'd like to introduce our final speaker of the panelists this morning, Katrina Menzies-Pike, who's the editor of Sydney Review of Books. And Katrina's got, again, a wealth of experience. It's a very heavy-hitting, amazing panel, this, but is the editor of the award-winning digital critical journal, the Sydney Review of Books, and brings, again, a very interesting but also a slightly different perspective in the digital journey, and one that has been embedded from the onset, from my understanding. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you, and hello. I'm joining this panel from unceded Gadigal land, which is the land where I live and I work. I'm here at my desk at home, surrounded by books with lots of domestic chaos off screen. This isn't actually an unusual circumstance for me. I do often work at my office at Western Sydney Uni, where the Sydney Review of Books is based, and I'm home primarily now because Sydney is in lockdown. But the truth is, since I was appointed to this role in 2015, I've done most of my work from home. The Sydney Review of Books is a small digital-first organisation, and working remotely, encountering audiences and peers and crucially our writers via screens is just how we work. So in this brief presentation, I want to talk to the work that we've always done, how COVID changed that, and about what's ahead for us. So the Sydney Review of Books is a digital literary journal. We've been online since 2013. Our program's anchored by long-form review essays on Australian and international literature. Includes essays, interviews, and the occasional feature article. We work with writers from all over the country at every stage of their career, and we've always reached audiences both within Australia and internationally. I suppose our business is reaching audiences. Everything we publish is open access. We're not paywalled, but we do ask for reader donations on a public radio model. And the critical reviews we publish aren't PR, to the sometimes chagrin of book publicists, but they work to signal boost the literary publishing sector and to build an informed and engaged audience for Australian literature. That audience buys books, goes to events, and supports writers in other ways. What I've observed in my time at the SRB is a very gradual recognition that serious cultural criticism and commentary can be delivered online. When I started back in 2015, we did a reader survey to inform a redesign of our website. And my designer was utterly incredulous when the survey told us that 15% of our readers printed our essays to read instead of reading them on screen. They felt that screens lacked a certain legitimacy. Those attitudes have changed, thank goodness. And since then, we've seen our audience grow as part of a bigger shift online. Our audience is much more comfortable with the user experience of reading online. And I think the intellectual and literary legitimacy of that work is no longer in question. Now, this recognition accelerated in 2020. We saw a boost in our audience as people retreated to their screens and a greater understanding of the range of cultural encounters available online, like those that have been described by panelists here. This all sounds like very good news for a small organisation, but the ongoing problem for literary journals and organisations like ours online is connecting with audiences and particularly reaching new ones. We reach readers in three principal ways: via our long-standing newsletter, via social media, and via keyword searches. So if someone wants to find out about the latest winner of the Miles Franklin Award, for example, they often wind up on our site. The bad news for us is that social media and search algorithms are not particularly interested in small arts organisations from Australia. We can reach an international audience very easily, but we're competing with the London Review of Books, the New York Review of Books. We see a lot of really terrific work going viral, but we see a lot of equally good work sinking beneath the surface of these inscrutable algorithms. So readers miss out, and so too do the writers and organisations that publish their work. At the SRB, we're in the process of launching a new project called The Circular. It's an Australia Council sector recovery initiative, and we're trying to understand some of these audience dynamics better and to build knowledge about how digital audiences now and in the future will connect with new Australian writing online. We're building an aggregator that will curate Australian literary content from across platforms and across organisations and deliver it to readers in the form of a weekly newsletter, as well as inevitably across social channels. We've received an incredibly enthusiastic response to this initiative from our peers, which suggests to us that it's really overdue. This is a collaborative project. It's led by the SRB, but we're thinking of this in terms of amplifying the work of many organisations, building a more engaged audience for Australian writing as it exists in so many different forms online. There's no sense to us in going it alone here. Part of our work will be reporting back to the sector and particularly to other small literary organisations what we've learned about audience engagement. We'll be asking our peers in particular what the effect of this kind of aggregation is on their audiences and also on their revenue. We've got great confidence that this will be a useful and a timely intervention, and we hope that it helps us to lay a pathway to a sustainable future for our art form. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's amazing. It's so great to hear a different art form perspective and to hear about the challenges but also the successes in literature. Thank you very much. We've heard from each of our speakers and from each of the panelists around their particular case studies and their particular contexts. And what I want to do now is I'm conscious that we're running close to time, but we do have some interesting questions coming through from the live event app. What I'd like to do is to make sure that each of the speakers has an opportunity for a sort of last word or for a wrap comment. So going to probably for one question that's coming through from this Q&A. So I'm looking to the side because my screen, the Q&A is coming through there. To each of you to be able to sort of do a last thought or a last context in that. And from our perspective here, the words I'm hearing coming through are the importance of collaboration, building knowledge, deeper engagement, the importance of country and place, the importance of art form, and really strong, the importance of people and community. So that seems to be really coming through. So one of the questions that came through was, how can we as an industry work better together to bring arts and culture into living rooms and to actually, to bring arts and culture to people and to community. So for each of you to just sort of do a final thought on how we as an industry can work better together, and how we can work to bring arts and culture into the living rooms, and then we'll be able to wrap up from there. Maybe if I could ask Kathy and Dora and bring you back into the conversation.
Thank you, Ros. Look, I guess one of the really important things for a remote Indigenous Arts Centre is that we share what we have with community, which also means bringing it into their lounge rooms so that culture is passed on. In terms of the wider audiences and engaging with them, we really want to be able to share those positive stories that we're experiencing up here. And to do that, I think the critical thing for us is to collaborate with expertise in the industry. We don't have it here, so we will always be looking for partnerships that can assist us. We were lucky to have some pro bono support from Macquarie to help us with our digital marketing. So more partnerships like that can assist are critical.
Absolutely. Would you like to add anything there, Dora?
No, right. I think my final comments would be, I love the idea that Anne spoke about of having a digital strategist in the organisation to actually think about what digital means to everything that you do. I guess our experience and what I've heard everybody else talk about today is just how important collaboration is right now as we all learn new skills and work our way through these new digital opportunities, and what fantastic opportunities there might be in the future to share skills, experience, and even shared platforms so that we're not all going out and doing things separately, but actually working together. Partnerships in the arts sector are incredibly important, but I think also let's look at partnerships outside our sector, because everybody, doesn't matter what industry you're in, is going digital right now. And if we can learn from them, how brilliant that will be. So thanks again.
Absolutely. I agree with all. Adele and Chris, I know you're individuals, but we're putting you together. So Adele?
Yes, certainly. I think I couldn't have put it better than Libby myself. I think we need to let go of that competitive mindset that we may have all had in the past and seek to share our knowledge so that we can all benefit from what we are learning and from the networks that we are developing. That I think is key to the future. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not only working outside our industry, but also working outside the metropolitan. So having those connections with regional Victoria and regional Australia, as well as just within metropolitan.
Fantastic. Anne, who you got?
Yeah, look, I think the other thing that is remembering the role of the artist and the place of the artist in all of this in terms of what it is we're seeking to go digital with is really, really important, and something that, as arts managers often, there's this tension we walk between kind of trying to keep the business afloat but make space for the art. And, I think never losing sight of why you exist as an organisation, and that digital is a mechanism to amplify what you already do has been my really interesting kind of key thing. Our strategic plan hasn't really changed at all in terms of what we're seeking to do and the streams of activity, but the method of delivery has completely changed. And I think going forward, collaboration is absolutely vital. And, you know, like many things, you don't know what you don't know. And until you can find someone to teach you and you're prepared to keep learning, you have all of the opportunities that are in front of us available.
Fantastic. And Katrina, last words, land to you.
I think 2020 for us made really apparent that the literary world is an ecology made up of interdependent organisations and writers, and that our fates, our successes are all bound up in each other. And that should drive an ethos of collaboration and knowledge sharing across the sector. And what we're trying to do with our circular project is to give that concrete form and create tangible channels for collaboration, for cross-sector signal boosting, and for knowledge sharing.
Fantastic. Oh, I could keep talking with you guys for ages. It's been fantastic. You've all just presented such interesting case studies. And the questions that are coming through, I will also thanking you and really enjoying the presentations. And I think my understanding is that we're going to use these questions to continue the conversation in the future, and so they're not lost. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank each of you, thank the panels for presenting and speaking today, thank the audience for connecting through the Q&As, and thank the tech support team who've assisted us to make this all happen. So thank you very much and enjoy the next conversation. Over to you, Adrian.
Thank you so much, Roz, for leading such a terrific panel, and to Kath, Dora, Libby, Chris, Katrina, Anne and Adele for taking time to share their insights, such instructive insights. I hope that session provided valuable to everyone. Thank you to those who have been busy submitting questions. We received a number of questions following the Minister's address, and rest assured these will be shared with his office. Now, before the second of today's panels, we'd like to take a moment to share a few examples of what Arts Going Digital has meant for you.
The Arts Going Digital meant that we could keep singing together. Absolutely everybody.
This technology now is going to be able to enable us to keep even more people engaged into the arts as we move forward into the new COVID world.
Absolutely everybody, 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 absolutely everybody in the whole wide world. Absolutely everybody, everybody and every girl. Absolutely everybody.
Welcome to the good ship Aboriginals. I am Travis de Vries, and I am your captain.
I think Sonia and Simon and Brian have had a great day today.
I really love Simon, I think he's great.
This is a unique opportunity to further actors at back-to-back to kind of represent people with disabilities, to kind of in a way represent themselves.
Lurla itula naga. Manlay tuka. Kurara Budit Japan. Ala Akngara Kwajala naga.
Cross, go! Hurry! You guys have got to get away! You need somewhere to hide, now!
Audio play lets you step into the story and be the character that you love. So each player is hearing the audio from their own character's point of view.
Cover your head, Abby! That parrot is swooping you! Ah!
going to spin the wheel of disobedience. It's going to land on one of 5 creative tactic categories. Players will then be given a question or a scenario to problem solve. Now the aim? To score points to become the most creatively disobedient player. The winner gets beer.
Time for our second panel and another chance for you to join the conversation using the Interact Live app. Leading the panel, Digital Futures, is National Head of Tourism and Arts from NBN, Jennifer Gansky, and along with her guest, she discusses what comes next, looking at the opportunities that have arisen when the arts go digital.
Good morning, and thank you, Adrian. My name is Jennifer Gansky, and I'm the National Lead for Arts and Tourism at the NBN. I would like to acknowledge the land from which I join you digitally today. I'm on Wutherong land in Ballarat this morning. For those of you coming in on audio only, I am an olive-skinned woman in my mid-40s with long brown hair. I'm wearing a black top and a cream jacket, and I'm sitting in front of a white wall in my guest room. A small white cat may or may not make an appearance with me today. A reminder that you can be part of today's conversations. To join in with the Q&A, open the Interactive Live app and press the Interactive Sections button. Then select Digital Futures and click through to put your question in. I'm thrilled to be moderating the discussion on digital futures with many of the nation's leaders in the arts this morning. The format of this conversation will follow the same pattern as the previous one. I will announce our speakers and introduce you to them as a group, and then pass to each of them to share with you their experiences on digital futures. We will then jump to audience Q&A. Joining us this morning to discuss digital futures further and ways that we can revolutionize the arts when we go digital are Philip Watkins, Executive Officer of Desart. In 2011, Philip was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of Desart. Prior to his appointment at Desart, Philip was employed as the Artistic and Cultural Director at the National Aboriginal Cultural Institution. Welcome, Philip. We also have with us today Liam Ridgway, co-founder of Natkinyagu and Indigitech. He also presented a brilliant acknowledgement of country this morning. Thank you, Liam. I'd also like to welcome Amrit, Artistic Director and CEO of 4A Center for Contemporary Asian Arts. Amrit is an artist and cultural worker with experience in producing programs, strategy, international relations, community development, and social enterprise. Welcome today. We also have from Back to Back Theatre in Geelong joining us today, Tim Stitz, the executive producer and co-CEO, and his incredible colleague, Scott Price, an ensemble and board member of Back to Back. Back to Back is a theatre based in Geelong that has created a body of work that questions the assumptions of what's possible in theatre. Welcome, team. We also have Raj Sidhu, creative producer of Australian Theatre Live. Australian Theatre Live uses advances in digital technology to film live performance theatre and distribute it across the country, world. And it's regardless of distance, availability, and affordability. They're leading the way in access. I'd like you all today to bring up the most incredible things that you've witnessed and where you think we're moving forward in the future using digital to revolutionize our experience. I might throw to you, Philip, to start the conversation.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today to the and be part of this panel. I'd like to acknowledge the Marakatui and Kurunguru of Mbantua and all their families. Also want to acknowledge the all the other panel members. Great to be with you here today, and also the audience, and to acknowledge the lands in which you're dialing in from. I suppose I'll come to the panel today with a perspective of a lot of things that Desart did in the background to support our member art centres. Desart is an association of Central Australian Aboriginal art centres, and we have a membership of 36 very remote art centres located in Central Australia. I'd like to start off, I suppose, the initial point I wanted to make is something that the Minister raised in his opening speech, and that is to be able to exist and operate and participate, capture opportunities, we need to have good broadband internet connectivity. And across the country, we know that it's varied and not necessarily even across the country. But I want to acknowledge the work that is being done by the Australian government and the commitment and the prioritisation of ensuring that regional, remote and very remote communities do have this opportunity. But I'm not going to focus on it, but it is an issue, and it is an issue in terms of being able to participate. And whilst Desart was undertaking a whole lot of activities in the digital space prior to COVID, including some of our training and professional development activities, as well as the development and management of an arts management database used by a majority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art centres across the country. What COVID did for us was really escalate the need to move digitally into the digital space. And some art centres, many art centres were operating in that space through online, having online sales capacity and doing some amazing marketing of their art centres in the digital space. When COVID hit, the immediate issue for us in terms of supporting art centres was to ensure that two key roles that art centres have were maintained and we were able to support. And that was being to ensure that through the digital world, through the online space, we were able to support art centres to present digital content. So having the frameworks to enable them to do that, with the purpose of, another purpose being to generate sales and maintain income for artists. And so we had to pivot very quickly to enable this to happen. And while there were these functionalities we had, what it also exposed was our limitations. And throughout the year, we've worked to address a lot of these issues. Desart's key signature event for the year was Desert Mob. And it's an event where there's an exhibition and a platform for artists to tell their stories, as well as a marketplace. And we had to move very quickly to ensure that art centres could that we could still support art centres to fulfil these two key things. So we moved out all of our activities to an online space, and in doing so, supporting those art centres that had some capacity to move forward, but also particularly supporting those art centres that had limited capacity. And so a lot of our focus was behind the scenes, ensuring that the arts management database had efficiencies in terms of flow with online websites and other online portals, and ensuring that information and data was flowing very quickly. And I was very pleased. I was nervous, but I was very pleased with the outcome in that we were able to grow our Desert Mob symposium or artist platform to tell their stories from an audience of 450 physically in a theatre here in Alice to an online international audience of 18,000. Similarly with the marketplace, generated in excess of 150 increase in sales over the previous year, which was a physical marketplace. So in doing that, in getting to that point, it did expose a lot of limitations, I suppose, that really do have focused our gaze now to the future. And that's primarily to ensure that, one, the connectivity, so our conversations with the national government and NBN in terms of connectivity, internet connectivity is improved, but also that art centres have the infrastructure to be able to participate, that it is up to date and that it is current infrastructure, IT infrastructure. Similarly, in terms of content, supporting art centres to develop content that promotes their art centres and the arts practice that is happening in those art centres, and then being able to move that into an online space and looking at other opportunities, I suppose, once this content is developed. And we see from last year what had happened, that some of that content is now being broadcast on TV and other social media platforms. I suppose the big issue for us going forward is who determines this content, who makes this content, and a key focus for Desart is to ensure that the skills and knowledge necessary to develop this content is secured and embedded within the communities in which it's coming from, and ensuring that particularly Aboriginal art workers have opportunity to gain these skills and being able to practice these skills for the benefit of their art centres. I did mention that SAM is Stories, Art and Money database. It's a cataloguing and financial management database for art centres. And a project that we had been working on prior to COVID, a pilot project, a digital label project, was in train. But again, the development of that QR code, the digital label, which is a QR code, sitting behind that, the technical necessity to ensure efficient and reliable flow of information is happening, but also content. Again, coming back to content, who's making this content, who's determining this content, is something we're very much focused on, and I suppose adjusting our programs and particularly our professional development programs in a way that ensures that Aboriginal art workers in remote communities are able to engage in that space and own that space. And in one of the previous presentations, Kathy from Warringurri highlighted their move to this QR code, and that connectivity with the SAM database is very critical in terms of stock management, content management, etc. So a lot of our work has been behind the scenes in terms of ensuring that the frameworks, the technical frameworks are there to enable participation in the digital space, but also going forward, it's critical that Aboriginal people in these communities have the opportunity to gain and get these skills to go forward.
Great. I think we can all agree, Philip, what an amazing inspirational success Desert Mob presented as an example. And I think you highlight something really important in the fact that it's an ecosystem. Connectivity is one pillar, but it's also having that IT and digital literacy and capability components that really interlock and unlock all the potential. Liam, I might throw it to you to add your experience layer over this.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. So I'd again like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands that we're gathered on today. I'd also like to pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters on this call today as well. So my name's Liam Ridgway. So I'm the co-founder of Nukunyagu and GNY for short, and in Digitech, and also a member of the Advisory Council, which created the digital culture strategy for the Australia Council. So as part of Nukunyagu, so being a digital agency, 100% Aboriginal owned, part of the work that we do is around online development of digital solutions, and part of that as well involves design work around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander designs, and working and following community protocols to be able to engage with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists across the country. So, for example, if we're approached by an organisation to create an artwork and that organisation is based in a particular part of the country, we would typically try to engage and find ways to connect with artists within those locations who are working, again, to follow that protocol. One of the biggest challenges is being able to provide that level of opportunity and comfort for people in community to explore these pathways. So what we do is we can work with artists who work on canvas, for example, and then convert that into digital. But what we want to do is we want to go through this journey of being able to help artists start looking at how they can become more digitally engaged, so that then opens up not only a door for them to work with us through and Gen Y, but also for them to then explore more and more opportunities because of the establishment of the Indigenous procurement policy, so the federal government's procurement policy around engaging and working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander owned businesses and entrepreneurs. This opens up a new opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists as well within this space. On the second hand as well, so in co-founder of Indigitech, which I co-founded 5.5 years ago. So Indigitech's a charity which provides learning career pathways for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who want to explore STEM. And part of that journey as well is technical and non-technical opportunities. And through this journey, what we've done is a community of people in this space, and now this community is predominantly digital. But we were physical community. We used to catch up. We used to have in-person events where a presenter from an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander background talking about their experience in STEM, and then the purpose of that was to inspire other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our community to start looking at those pathways around exploring STEM, and some of that as well is around graphic design, digital design, and and our journey is to continue to push and grow that. At the moment, we're about to launch one of our first programs in Western Sydney, and then we're also doing another program in Catherine. But the idea is to actually start building digital literacy, start building exposure to the pathways and the opportunities that are available to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But one thing that I'll really make clear here is that where we see the opportunities by sharing our stories of people who in our community who have already taken these journeys in regards to a career pathway or setting up their own business across the STEM spheres, and being able to use those as stories that inspire people. And then our goal within this too is to be able to look at not just tapping into people in community, for example, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in metropolitan areas, but looking at how we're converting people's mindsets and opportunities and ways of thinking around pathways or STEM pathways. And the purpose of that is because we know that there are people out there who we basically, in a simplistic way, I would call converted. We know that there are people that are converted who are already going to explore these pathways. Our goal is to make sure that we're also tapping in and connecting with people who aren't necessarily converted or have thought about these pathways. And we exist as Indigitech to create a family, which then that family is then there to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people through their journeys. And because of the different hats that I wear, I've had the opportunity to then be invited to be a part of the Australia Council's Digital Advisory Committee. And a few key points that came out of that were around, in particular, things that really took, that I was really focused on, was making sure that we understood the spectrum of people who were more skilled and had more knowledge and experience using digital, all the way through to having very little skill or no skill at all, and everything in between that, and making sure that we understood, and instead of just saying, well, everyone needs to just get on this journey, we actually need to understand, well, where are people at and what journey are they taking, and then being able to then build the models and the frameworks of support that allow us to then support individuals to take those journeys, and for them to then be able to explore what this pathway looks like for them, but also what potential risk-taking looks like. But how do we start using some of the models that are used by people in entrepreneurship and technology around lean methodology. How do we start getting people to feel like it's okay to be able to test and start making mistakes, and to really start building up their skills and experience and knowledge by getting out there and immersing themselves into it. So that digital cultural strategy, that is now publicly available, and you can find that on the Australia Council website as well.
Thank you, Liam. I know we talked earlier in the prep this morning just about how participating in putting together that digital culture really opened up my mind to how many of those inspirational stories there are and where people are on that journey. I couldn't agree more. Baselining that is going to be crucial for the arts to help make those steps forward. Amrit, I might pass over to yourself to share some of your thoughts.
Thanks, Jen. I have some images that will play in the background that will illustrate some of the work that I'm talking about. Hi, everyone. My name's Amrit Gill. I'm the Artistic Director and CEO of the 4A Centre for Contemporary Asian Art. I'm presenting from Gadigal land in Sydney today. I'm a woman of North Indian descent. I have brown skin and dark brown curly hair. I'm wearing a high neck black multicoloured top, and behind me is a white wall. For 25 years, 4A has supported art and artists that addressed Asian Australian experiences and the contributions that diverse Asian migration has made and continues to make in shaping Australia. I'm speaking today about 4A Digital, a project that was initiated in May 2020 with the support of the City of Sydney as a platform for 4A to sustain creative output and continue commissioning artists amid the first COVID-19 lockdown. 4A Digital was conceived as a space for creative and academic exploration, giving artists the opportunity to experiment and investigate concepts and ideas outside of exhibition and published journal formats. In 2020, we commissioned 19 works and supported 39 artists. Curator Conjera Karas and the 4A team specifically looked at artists at the time whose work would translate best online or into a web or digital consumption format. Artists were asked to present what they were working on, easing the pressure to deliver fully polished or finished projects. The work published took the format of lectures, photo essays, video diaries, and short form documentaries, digital manipulation, video works, and web comics. And in late 2020, 4A Digital hits the streets, transformed digital artworks into interactive street posters across Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. The posters featured custom-made augmented reality animations, and viewers utilised the iJack application to bring these posters to life. So this was a way that we were able to bring the digital and physical hybrid into reality. 4A Digital has evolved in 2021 to commission work specifically for exhibition and consumption online or on a device, exploring digital identity, virtual realms, and the depths of cyberspace. As both medium and mediator, we recognise that screens have become the primary gateway to cultural exploration and the dissemination of information. Within the restrictive borders of our devices, artists, programmers, and authors have learned to expand our virtual experiences as a method of creative practice and self-discovery. So this year we're commissioning 10 works by 11 artists who are working in creative code, audiovisual experiences, and 3D animation to create immersive projects delving into personal and shared journeys, or pushing the boundaries of how we interact with online environments. This has really taken, I guess, the concept of what exhibiting is from gallery, physical space, into the digital space, and that's something that we're really keen to continue exploring, and it really expands what our role is as a contemporary visual arts organisation. We've engaged a curator, Marco Rinaldi, with the support of the Sally Breen Family Foundation. Having recognised that this is an emerging vanguard in curating, and we acknowledged a skills gap. We may have digital natives in the team, but curating for a digital space is new and requires some very specialised set of curatorial skills and knowledge. So being able to build this capacity in our team was really important. So while going in digital in 2020, as so many artists and arts organisations have, started as a way to continue supporting artists' creative output and connecting with audiences. We recognise that this is an exciting time to keep expanding these exhibition formats and supporting artists whose work doesn't translate into a traditional white cube space. Bringing in curatorial skills and knowledge has expanded the group of artists we can work with and exploration of interesting formats for making work. Moving into coding, gaming, and social media and other formats that are specifically for the digital space. And with these artists comes a different audience and the ability to shift how and where exhibiting happens. So we're hoping to continue this exploration into 2022 and beyond and see where 4A Digital can take us next. And in addition to upskilling in digital curation, we're also needing to boost our capacity in terms of our online platforms and our website. So that's getting a revamp as well. Philip talked about infrastructure as being really key, in our web infrastructure we have learnt really needs an upgrade to be able to continue publishing this work. Thank you.
No, thank you. I really am grateful that you highlighted that importance of designing for the medium. I think that when we first came into the pandemic, there was a lot of thought that we could just recreate what we already had online. And I think what you've highlighted really does speak to that excitement of what's possible in the future. That skills gap right now that maybe exists in that digital space will really open up the doors for some new, incredible creative opportunities. So thank you. Scott and Tim, I might ask you guys to share a little bit about your journey.
Should we start, Tim?
Yeah, let's start.
Cool. Thanks, Jennifer. Now, I'd like to basically acknowledge that we are standing on the lands of the Wotherwam people, and that we pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. So, what was I going to talk about, Tim?
Well, and we were just also going to do a description. I'll do
Yeah, you go first.
I'm a cis white Caucasian male in my early 40s. I have a shaved head and I'm wearing a beard and have black rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a sort of burgundy top. We're coming to you from, as Scott said, our headquarters on Wotherwam country, which is otherwise known as Geelong, and the company's always been based and born in this part of the world. And we're coming to you from our library at our office.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe yourself?
Yeah, I can describe myself. So I'm a Australian Dutch person, to say the least. I've also got, brown hair, bit of a short beard. I'm also autistic, and also I'm also wearing a black Ramones shirt and a headset. So where should we start, team?
So we might just start with our first slide, which is our logo, or this is actually a democratic set.
No, it's democratic set.
Well, and I just wanted to describe our logo it's our company name, all in all caps, block stacked on top of itself in black and white, and it's framed by a square. But our company is far from black and white, nor is it square.
No, it's not. It's actually not. Oh, God.
We enjoy plumbing the grey spaces and pushing to the edges of and interrogating convention. And we platform otherness as an asset, and it's something to be proud of. We make performance works. The company's been known for that. We usually make works over a 3-year cycle. And then prior to COVID had been touring a lot of these works nationally and internationally.
Yeah.
And we also make a lot of works with community. And I wanted to start off by talking about the democratic set and radial, which are works that we've made in community, and that they end with a screening for that community, but they have digital assets which have sort of lingered and lasted, and they are what we've also been able to showcase on our website and also they've been screened in places, particularly during COVID.
Oh, we have, yeah, totally have, to say the least.
Yeah, and they're an experimental residency for to sort of show a community in action, isn't it?
Oh, it is in a way. It is. It's a experimental residency to showcase our talents and what we can do as artists.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to talk about something we did actually. This is way back in 2015, but Scott was the centre of this. This is called Price, which is a video blog.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think it's lived on, and we'd like to do more of this kind of work in the future, because it started off as a marketing.
It did, yeah. I
project,
tell you what happened was there. So I was doing, actually, this is what we call a smartphone. So it's what we call be connected, what they call like be connected era, to say the least. I think what we were doing, or sorry, that's here. What I was doing here was I was doing like what they call, like news reports, sports reports, like whatever on social media, and I think it just caught on, to say the least, and yeah, I was doing I think it was so Bruce came out and said, "Oh, we've got this project, stop, tell me what you're thinking, and I'll come up with something." And I think so as Tim said, it started off with some like marketing project, and I think it was in the end I ended up on the 7:30 report.
Yeah.
On the ABC.
And it's quite a hard-hitting interview series. So it was really about provocation of artists and thinkers, and that's a way that perhaps you might not think that back to back. Immediately you might think of our work and the way we work in community, but it was something a bit different. And I think these are things that we've been talking about, sort of coming back to in the time of the pandemic. I wanted to reference Oddlands, which we just saw in the little video package before the panel, which was a short, but also a pilot for a TV series that we made back in 2016 with Matchbox Pictures, and then it premiered at the 2017 Adelaide Film Festival, and that was a product of the Hive Lab. But I guess it really, at the heart of Back to Back, is an ensemble of actors, and they are the bedrock of the company. Scott is one of our ensemble members. We have another 4.
We do.
And it was an interest of the ensemble, as well as our artistic director Bruce Gladwin, to sort of have a foray into film and television. And so some of those works exist in a digital space, as well as those more traditional screen, film and television spaces. Moving forward to 2020, I want to talk about First Responders, which is a project that we were doing with Nelson Park Primary School, which is a non-mainstream special school in Northern Geelong, and we've been collaborating with them for a number of years. And it started off as a project that we would make together and then do a theatrical outcome at the end of 2020. But obviously, we had to move online, and that was not without, we had to learn how to do that, as I'm sure all of us can appreciate. And then what came out of it was these 4 participants made 90-second videos or short animations, and they are sort of called upon as, would you want to describe First Responders, who they are?
Very vaguely. I mean, actually, Tim, you might have basically a bit more information about this, but I think what it was originally some project which actually, Tim, I think I described this. I'm literally blanking out.
That's all right. No, these are knowledge experts, and so we wanted, Cam, Brianna, Jay, or Ben to respond to a question for these times. And they, in a way, you call the first responders. They come with the sirens blaring to come and help you out. And this is something that we then put up on our socials and our channels on Vimeo, on our website. But then also we've explored, and there's some interest from this ABC to put these all onto the streaming platforms and then go for broadcast.
Yeah.
We've made 8, and we're in the midst of making another 12 that will be hopefully screened in 2022.
So hopefully it'll be on the ABC and ABC Me, I think, on those apps, to say the least.
We've got a bit of a secret squirrel, but that's all right. We're happy for you to know. And also in 2020, what we did was we were working around an adaptation. The ensemble worked with Bruce Gladwin to develop the screenplay for a film adaptation of our most recent theatre work, The Shadow Whose Prey the Hunter Becomes. And this happened coming out of Victoria's really long lockdown as the Ring of Steel came down in Victoria. We made this film, and it is a film adaptation. It's not sort of filmed theatre per se. It is somewhere between like a feature film and the
it's not. It's not.
But we've just finished post-production on it, and it's something then we want to. We're looking for pathways at the moment for this film. And one of the things I wanted to mention, because obviously we as a company have had to recognise our skills gap in, you know, working in the film and television area in particular. This is a still of you, Scott,
there's me
at the end of the film.
the least.
And one of the things we put in place with this film project was an internship program where we had 35 interns that worked behind and in front of the camera. And obviously we're upskilling ourselves in this space because we don't presuppose to be filmmakers, we're theatre makers originally. But then also we wanted to redress perhaps some issues around representation and access for people who experience and live with disability. So this project became, obviously, we have the outcome as its own piece of art, but then we have the beginnings of a framework to bring on internships and provide pathways for artists and arts workers or filmmakers who want to upskill and perhaps haven't been able to in the past. Should we leave it there?
I think we should leave it there. Thank you.
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. I think you really highlighted some incredible, exciting opportunities where the digital medium can then make that jump into broadcast. That's congratulations. I think that that's pretty exciting. And also just identifying that you're finding inspiration in what the last 18 months have to also create new content. You know, that we are using the arts to tell the story of the really recent last 18 months to us and really highlighting that digital opportunity. I might bring Rajan to wrap up this segment from the panelists before we jump to Q&A.
Thanks, Jennifer. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunwarang people, their elders, past, present and emerging. I'm in Naarm. It's been great listening for the last hour and a half or whatever it's been to all of these different stories and the ways in which companies are able to embrace digital and find ways to really start being creative in how it is disseminated, not only through Australia, but obviously around the world, as this digital portal allows us to do. I want to also thank the Australia Council for the invitation to come and tell our story today. And it was great to hear the Minister talk with such enthusiasm. And I think that nurturing spirit that government and agencies can provide to companies and artists that are looking to really make digital part of normal artistic practice. And I think Australian Theatre Live was really born of that opportunity. We, myself, Grant Dodwell and Peter Hiscock are the directors, the founding directors of Australian Theatre Live. Since about 2007, we've been talking about it. And then we had the opportunity sort of around 2013, 2014 to work with the Ensemble Theatre to capture Jeffrey Atherton's play, Liberty, Fraternity, Equality. And that was our first pilot project to go, okay, we've seen overseas people start to bring theatre into the digital mainstream. How can we in Australia do the same thing? We're a not-for-profit organisation. We realise that certainly in its infancy in Australia, it's very difficult to recoup cost of this kind of expensive production. And yet we know it is an essential part of being able to tell Australian stories to a wider group of people, with theatre companies finding it more difficult to tour these days, with the budgets for even singular productions shrinking in order to be able to make more theatre. We see our opportunity is to capture some of that and be able to distribute it to a wider market, both in Australia and overseas. The mediums in which we want to work are obviously cinema. We see event cinema as a really burgeoning part of the theatrical experience in Australia and around the world, but also through digital channels, streaming services, and indeed in the last couple of years we've had great partnerships with ABC iView to be able to present a catalogue of our work, especially during the COVID period. That was a great period last year for us to be able to offer our works to the Australian public through iView. And we also did a streaming festival of some of our plays via Facebook, a great platform to be able to offer free theatre to people stuck down here in Naarm in Melbourne during the last lockdown, and clearly that's happening in Sydney now. So in terms of our history, in 2016, we were offered, we were able to secure a Catalyst grant, and that really boosted from what was basically a self-run, self-funded organisation. It boosted us into the opportunity to be able to capture 5 plays very quickly within a year. And then 2017 to today, we self-funded. A little bit through some generation of income that was coming from the 5 products that we had in the catalogue, but also we have a media company, and to our folly, we've invested our profit of that company into capturing more plays through Australian Theatre Live. And with the RISE funding that the Minister mentioned, thanks Minister Fletcher for mentioning it at the beginning of the talk today, we've secured money to be able to really reach out to more theatre companies and capture work from all across Australia. So far this year, we've got 4 productions in the can: Wharf Review, an independent production, You're Not Special, at King's Cross Theatre, an opera by Pinchgut, Apollo and Daphne, and with the Queensland Theatre Company, Taming of the Shrew, a cast of 9, a big production that was originally done as an independent production, and Queensland Theatre have partnered to bring that up to QT. So through these opportunities, our business model really is to work with and partner with theatre companies to either co-fund, or at the moment with our funding, being able to almost completely fund these productions. The way we film, and this is thanks to Panasonic, they've been fantastic partners with us. The way we film is to create a cinematic product. We use film cameras. In fact, in Queensland recently, we were looking around just before we started shooting Taming of the Shrew, and we were looking at $1 million worth of camera equipment and sound equipment to capture that one play. Now, we don't own all that equipment. Clearly, we lease it. But in partnership with leasing companies, with theatre companies, and with production houses like The Editors, our production partner in Sydney at the moment, who are turning our plays around and bringing them to the ABC and digital and different places, we've been able to gather more and more stories. We're now a catalogue of 13. We're looking to have 20 plays by the end of 2022. And again, that's thanks to funding and the opportunity to partner with theatre companies who see the opportunity to work with us to bring the sense of live theatre captured on film to many more parts of the country. So we will have, with the RISE funding, we will have tripled our catalogue in 2 years. We're kind of budgeted to do 4 or 5 plays per year on the RISE funding. We think we can do more than that. We've got another 3 or 4 slated to do this year, and another 5 slated to do next year. In terms of what we've been able to achieve so far, the biggest kind of run we did was in 2019, we partnered with 26 cinemas to bring event cinema around the country to many smaller regional communities. We've also got theatre in a box, we call it, which is Play in a Box is a couple of road cases that we can send out to local government areas in rural and regional Australia, where they can pop up a cinema and put on a couple of Australian plays. And that's been successful in the ways that we've been able to do it. And again, with this funding, we're looking to do 3 larger scale versions of Play in the Box in Queensland, in New South Wales, in South Australia and Victoria. I heard through some of the earlier speakers the idea of, working with artists. I mean, so far this year we've engaged 45 artists, let alone the tech crews and the sorts of people that work with us. But really what I'd love to do is open for questions around this whole idea of, partnering with the Media Entertainment Alliance, partnering with rights holders, with playwrights, with theatre companies. What are some of the hurdles? What are some of the ways that we can collaborate and elaborate the whole idea of digital, knowing that this thing here is the new way that people engage with all kinds of arts, and what are the ways that we can bring people into that medium in order to drive them back into the live theatre experience, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to be able to give people a different version of theatre to really get them thinking, hey, how can I now experience that live? Just like we do with music, We listen to an artist on the radio, or we watch their film clip on television, and we say, wow, I'd love to go and see that artist live. Really, the thing that is behind Australian Theatre Live is exactly that. Get access to theatre in digital form, and then go and experience it for yourself live. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I think you paint a really exciting picture for the future, Raj. And I think one of the things, my takeaway is that it's really important that we also have the tools of the trade and deeply understand what those new ones are as we walk through this hybrid model that's being laid out. I've got several questions coming through on the chat for all of you, and I'm just mindful of time that I'd love to give you a bit of time for some final thoughts as well. So I might throw a couple of the questions to you and just ask you to keep your answers succinct as you can to see if we can get them all in. Liam, I might take the first one back to you just based on some of our early conversations. And the question is, how do we ensure that digital literacy across all communities, across all demographics and geographics, particularly for independent artists and small to medium not-for-profits, be sufficiently skilled up to keep up with the constantly and rapidly developing digital technology?
Yeah, I think, so that's a really good question. I think that, firstly, as I mentioned before, understanding what the ecosystem looks like in terms of what the I guess the digital skills, the varied skills as well that are required in different arts areas. So, for example, as Raj mentioned, how do we get the collaboration and connection with the bigger community, and how does that then actually give you a sense of what are the ideas, what are the possibilities that other people are exploring and utilizing, and how do you actually get to tap into that, but then also learn through collaboration with those people as well. I think the other thing too is one of the things that, as I mentioned before, around this spectrum is being able to understand where you sit within that spectrum and then being able to go, okay, well, where do I sit and where do I actually want to get to? And being able to understand where you want to get to, again, comes back to that collaboration side of things, but then also connecting with the the Arts Council, and part of their digital culture strategy is around them being able to actually connect with us and collaborate, but then seeing what the pathways and the possibilities are. So I think it's really about having that curiosity and being able to explore what the possibilities are, and then being able to go and explore them, and seeing how then when you start to explore those possibilities and start to experiment, how people then start to interact with what you're producing. I think that's a really key thing, is around the experimentation, because the experimentation gives you the chance to then dip your toe in and see if you like a potential pathway that you're going down. And then if you then want to further explore that, then you can, but at least you've gone in and had a bit of a go at it and started to form some experience and some information and knowledge around that, so that then you can then choose whether to explore that or not. At least that then becomes your choice by being exposed to it, and also by collaborating with others on those particular opportunities and pathways.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Liam. Amarit, I might throw one quickly to you from the audience. What bothers you the most currently in managing digital opportunities?
Bothers me the most. I think shifting the mindset that it is just about publishing existing content in a digital format. I think that is one very important aspect of it. And certainly from an archiving point of view, there's so much potential there. Particularly for 4A, we have this amazing 25-year archive, and in some cases we're the only people in Australia who hold some of this content. But really the opportunity and where we want to take it is keeping people engaged in this idea that you can consume and you can interact with creative practice in a digital space, and that is a completely acceptable and valid format. And in fact, it's a format that a lot of people solely consume art through. And so how we grow an audience for that, acknowledge that that could be a very different audience than the one that comes into our physical space, or the one that interacts with the other way we present work, I think is, it bothers me in a sense that it's a hill to climb, and it takes a lot of strategizing and a lot of work. But I think it's an incredible opportunity, and one that ultimately for a national and an international organisation such as ours is just so rich, and it's one that we won't let go when a snapback or a rebound ever occurs.
Yeah, thank you. Raj, I've got one coming through that is directed to yourself. How can dramaturgy and critical theory be adapted for meaningful applications in this new digital space?
Goodness gracious, it's a very, I feel underqualified to answer that question. Look, we know that with the work that we're capturing, certainly teachers, universities are accessing our product and using it. Certainly in the times of COVID when live theatre was impossible to see, it made sense, right? In terms of how it's going to be used going into the future as well as attending live theatre, I think one of the things that allows the opportunity to do more readily is interviews with cast, with playwrights, with designers, with directors, so that you can watch a production, you know, toggle back on a certain scene and go, wow, the actors took, you know, 2 days to crack that 3-minute scene because of the difficulty, the complexity of the play, the characters, etc. So I think in terms of dramaturgy, we can get deeper into the why in terms of the playwright, as well as, you know, you talked about hybrid, Jennifer, as well as, you know, how does watching a play in the digital medium change your understanding of the play? So you might go and see the play live and say, well, that's one experience, and now I'm going to watch it in the way we shoot, which is very filmic. We do a lot of close-ups. We go from wides back into close. And how does that change your experience of understanding the character's journey and dilemma, even understanding the playwright and their intentions and the director and their intentions? So I think that's what excites me about the digital medium.
No, that's a great answer. Thank you. I've got a couple more questions, and I'll throw one out to the group. Especially for small to medium organizations, digital platforms and strategies can feel daunting, complex, and financially unattainable. Many have spoken about the necessity of arts organizations coming together to gain access to digital platforms. What does this look like? Did anyone want to have a tackle of that?
I'll take 60 seconds. I think what people have said earlier about this idea of how do we get this understanding of where you can access this simply, and how we can build a portal where from there, everyone on this screen, I can find their work really simply from there, rather than having to push out into the different sort of websites. So much like a Google in itself, that there is an Australian kind of portal that you go, wow, I can look at digital art, I can listen to music, I can watch concerts, I can watch plays, I can see, you know, little films that have been put together by different artists. I might even be able to learn how to, you know, make digital myself, all through this one kind of access portal. It would be my start in that realm.
I guess what was it like, you know, I mean, like echo, sorry, what's that word? So echoing, you know, like Raj's words there. I think we're all creating, like, you know, I mean, like content for our phones, and you know, we're all creating, you know, content for music, you know, theatre, and you know, the technology which is there, so to utilize that, you know, that content is abundant now, because there's all the apps, you know, like such as, you know, what's it called, iMovie or iMusic or, you know, or iTunes, and we're just creating stuff all on our little phones.
No, I think that's great. Now, there's one last question, and Philip, I might throw it to you, but then ask that you jump into your final thoughts at the end before we move on to Liam. But given that you guys have had such great international response this year, recently my small arts company received 100,000 from Epic Games to our interactive live performer digital technology innovation. But we've been struggling to raise funding here in Australia. Is Australia risk averse towards embracing digital technology?
Not in my experience, no. There's a hunger for it. And I suppose I speak from a perspective from Central Australia, and you know, the internet, mobile phones, etc. It's a really recent, relatively recent manifestation in our region, and it's certainly not the experience that I see. People are using mobile phones. They are wanting to engage in the digital world. They're wanting to still tell this story. From an Aboriginal perspective, it's an important stories to be told, and so and there's a hunger for these stories. Hence, I think, you know, some of the reaction we got in terms of the short films that we produced as part of the Desert Mob Symposium. So I don't. Yeah, I would suggest we're not averse for this new digital world. We want to having access to the technologies, having access to the infrastructure, the knowledge and the skills, and having them embedded within our communities is our challenges going forward. And you know, I suppose to echo points being made by a few, having these partnerships and these relationships is really critical. And I think one of the things that worked really well for our event last year was a number of the art fairs nationally. There was many conversations happening before the actual presentation in terms of what are you doing, how you're doing it, can we align ours with this but not to distract from yours. So all these conversations were happening, and you know, campaigns are, you know, Art is My Lifeline campaign done by the Indigenous Art Code was rolled out at really critical and strategic times. These all benefited each other, and I think it's really testament to the success of all the Indigenous arts fairs that were held over last year. I think the interesting thing for me going forward is we're kind of in this zone still of not knowing whether physical events are going to happen or are they going to be hybrid types of events. And, you know, just in the last couple of weeks, some major events have been, physical events have been cancelled and are going back online again. So we're still in this zone of not sure, but this story will continue. And I think, you know, what comes out of it at the end is going to, you know, going to be fantastic for, certainly for our sector, the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander art sector. A whole lot of content's being developed, a whole new way of thinking is happening, and a whole lot of collaborations are happening.
Thank you. Liam, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually also jump in a little bit on an answer to that question as well, or at least a response anyway. I think it's really important to be able to understand, you know, what the types of potential investors or supporters and funders that are out there, what value that you're bringing to them as well, what value proposition that they have. And I know I'm talking kind of business speak, entrepreneur speak, but it's about understanding what it is that they're looking for and what you can actually help them deliver to them, and what that value looks like. Because then when you start to really understand their narrative, and then you align your narrative with theirs, you identify those people who would actually be willing to fund you based on that values and that narrative alignment. And for those that don't necessarily have that alignment, and you just kind of say like, well, at least I know in advance that alignment doesn't exist, so I'll go and connect with people who do have that alignment. But one thing I would say, and this is, I guess, part of final thought too, is be comfortable to put yourself out there and get in front of as many people as possible. So start getting comfortable to be uncomfortable. And I say that from a place of experience because sitting on this panel now, for example, if you asked me to do this 8 years ago, I would have ran for the hills. I would have been sweating bullets, you know. So really starting to put yourself out there and be uncomfortable, because then doing that allows you to then start to experiment and explore and feel comfortable about who you are and how you're doing it. And again, I know it's easier said than done, but it's about continually pushing yourself and actually looking at these comfort zones and starting to stretch those bit by bit so that you're getting yourself out there and exposing your work and what you're doing to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Liam. Emma, did you want to wrap up with your final thoughts? Well, I think we might actually be experiencing the new digital technology and have one of us frozen. So I'll jump back to her when she's back in. Tim and Scott, I'll move to you guys.
Go create some like some movies, or some home movies. Yeah, I mean it's not that simple. No, it's not a question. So it's that simple. You just have what's it called? Like your iPhone or smartphone. You can just simply create like movies out of that simple like smartphones. Yeah, and you have all these kind of like filters. Doesn't cost much, you don't need one of those, like big bulky, like cameras. All you just need is a smartphone, It doesn't cost much, just to, like what's it called, like the camera, app is already there. Just go shoot what you want and simples.
I would just add as well to that there are multiple modes of creation. That's what I think Scott's getting at for sure.
Yeah.
And for us I think Liam, you've put the nail on the head. Like we've got to be okay to sit in the unknowing of not necessarily having all the frameworks in place that we need. I think for us, a tension and a challenge has been that a lot of we work with presenters, both nationally and internationally, to help present our live work. And then if we're thinking into the digital space, and particularly in film and television, how do we find the audience? So we obviously have a desire to create, and our ensemble wants to create pieces of art. Then what's the right alignment in terms of partnership? And something that we've certainly experienced, particularly with film and television, and this is at both ends of the spectrum, from high-end production to quite lo-fi.
Oh, lo-fi, yeah.
Is like how do we have understanding for what all our own priorities are? Like someone has said recently to me that in the film and television area they're like our cousins of live performance. We understand there's a lot of porousness between, but the structures are very different. The funding and priorities are very different. Yet I know at Back to Back, are really interested in it in this space because it's going to help us and our work reach more people. And so that's what we ultimately wanted, and why we were already interested in that space before the pandemic. The pandemic has really just crunched and sort of sped up the need.
Yeah.
It has.
Thank you. Raj.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for your facilitation and hosting today as well. I think I want to sort of end, and I'll do it quickly, a couple of minutes. First of all, I want to thank all of the artists, the actors, the directors, the writers, the technical people, the theatre companies themselves for having the courage to work with us and trust us and help us find what digital theatre means in Australia. That's been so special, and I really am humbled by people giving us that opportunity. And there's too many theatre companies to mention, in this couple of minutes. And the last thing I would do is imagine, ask you to imagine what if Australian content had its own Netflix? What if we build a platform that was Netflix for Australian artists?
Oh yeah, good point.
And we are, I think we're at the right at that nexus of being able to show to the world that we create as well as we are as innovative as anywhere else in the world, and we've got the artists and the technical savvy to prove it. And that's where I really want to push Australian Theatre Live to showcase the best work that we can.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I just want to take a moment and thank you all for participating. I'm always blown away by the incredible grace and generosity that the Australian arts community shares with each other, and tapping into the first forum that talks about collaboration. I think we are so far down that journey, and it's really just exploring the joint learnings, but the grace and the willingness is already there. Also, just before I hand back to Adrian, I'd like to thank the Australian Council for the Arts and the Office of the Arts for this great opportunity to get together and share ideas. So thanks, guys, and I'll pass on back to you, Adrian.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jen. And thanks to Philip, Liam, Tim, Scott, Raj and Amrit. Great to see you again, Amrit, for a wonderful conversation. So, in our closing session, we're looking at how we can continue to build for the digital future. I'd like to welcome back our event partner from NBN, the National Head of Tourism and Arts for NBN, Jennifer Gansky, and also joining us is the CEO of the National Institute of Dramatic Arts, Liz Hughes, and the co-CEO of Secret Sounds, Jessica DeCreux. Welcome to you all.
Thank you. Thanks.
So let's jump in, make the conversation as casual as we like. But first, perhaps starting with you, Liz. Can you take us through NIDA's response to the impact of COVID, particularly in how you deliver your programs for our emerging and creative talent?
Thanks very much, Adrian. It was an interesting moment when we realised what we were looking at was a pandemic, and we had various options. One was to delay things and postpone, but the other was to really take the opportunity that the pandemic created and enable us to really imagine what we could do at NIDA with our learning. The staff and students collaborated really, really well together. And in fact, they came up with inventive solutions for us to deliver our curriculum. We took the opportunity of a number of international and national artists who typically would be too busy to talk to us to actually engage with us directly. And we actually brought them into the learning as well. We enabled the students to learn, and they enabled us to learn about different technologies, and they started creating, as part of their learning, podcasts and stop motion animations. And I think that what was really amazing was that it was very much a collaborative conversation with all of the incredible team at NIDA, but also the students. I think one of the big challenges for us is we have a very much beloved production seasons, and we have one in June typically. So we had to imagine how we were actually going to translate that production season, digitally. So what we did was we postponed what we'd already planned for June and postponed that to later in the year. And we created a digital theatre festival. And the notion behind that was that we weren't going to be simply recording live productions, but we were actually going to be creating new work. And we decided we needed new work that needed to be produced on digital platforms, and we needed to engage with lead artists who were up for the challenge and up for kind of going on a bit of a journey, I suppose, with us. So David Berthold, the director in residence at NIDA, worked really collaboratively with 6 new artists. And we worked with a range of artists, some that are actually an Emmy Award-winning leader of augmented reality games, Sean Stewart. And we also worked with artists that have been typically more working in the theatre sphere. And what we did was we really chose people who had an idea that could work in this context. So we knew it was going to be new work. We knew that it had to work on a digital platform. And so David literally took those conversations and came up with a plan. We had 6 productions, and they were across a number of different platforms, including Vimeo, YouTube, Instagram, and the interactive gaming platform Twitch as well. And I have to say, it was amazing to watch the sort of innovation that happened and the transformation. So we had a couple of productions actually used a bit like a multicam sort of TV live production happened. So with one production, we had a production called Lunacy, and it was shot in a warehouse in Alexandria. And I rocked up to have a look at it. I was blown away by seeing a massive science fiction set, very retro and really fantastic. And then we actually had about 4 or 5 cameras around the set. And when I went upstairs, I had a look at the kind of the tech setup, and it was like a whole multicam studio that the students had created in collaboration with TDC, our partner. And it was like incredible for me as a filmmaker to go, how on earth have we managed to really create just such a big production number, and with such incredible production values. And the students' technical expertise really came to the fore, and they were creating the solutions all the time. So that was a live production. It was literally filmed over about an hour, with about 5 different cameras, live switching the whole kit and caboodle. We also had Nigel Jamieson made a production in collaboration very much with 4 or 5 actors. And what they did was it was about the lockdown. It was capturing, in a way, the drama that was unfolding. It was almost like a docudrama, capturing the drama that was unfolding all around us. And the students were were filming on their mobile phones. They were sending through different improvised scenes. And what the result was, a fantastic hour-long production that is really raw, that captures the emotion that was happening, and it's actually incredibly moving sort of artifact of the time. And then another example is an interactive production called Roundabout. So that was done with Sean Stewart. He was in Los Angeles. The actors were all in their bedrooms, and we had a fantastic technical team and designers and costume designers, etc. And what they did was they rehearsed the whole thing on Zoom, and then they created an interactive storyline. So they created so Twitch is a gaming platform, and typically you can see a game, and there's usually a chat on the side. So what they did was they created a script. Sean wrote a script of 350 pages. The actors learnt all of the lines. It was a basic sort of love triangle story, and the audiences could actually determine what there's another 3 characters that kept coming in and out that were virtual characters, and they could determine actually what the characters were going to be. They could actually vote on them through the chat. So every time that we put on this live production, it would be different, because the story would be determined by the audience. And as the actors got better and better at this, and as the time went on, they started improvising with the chat stream. So when people were making comments on the chat, they were actually interacting with that chat as well. So look, it was a fantastic experience, and it was really, it sort of changed, I suppose, all of the barriers were kind of sort of more fluid. So the students were very much key collaborators, and they worked really well with artists who created really a production in a very short period of time. It was like about 3 or 4 months in total. And it was an extraordinary experience. And I think what I learnt is that the innate training and the innate expertise that performance makers have, which is improvisation, connecting with audiences, and the ability to put the show on the road and just make stuff happen in a kind of a handmade, sometimes bolted on way, were kind of like core skill sets, which are really exciting to explore in digital platforms.
Liz, that's wonderful to hear. If anything, it reminds me of, the old Marshall McLuhan line, the medium is the message, but such brilliant examples of how creating for the medium is going to change the experience. It's quite remarkable. I think I know the answer to this, but so much of this kind of efflorescence of digital activity was born of necessity through COVID, and this extraordinary, irrepressible impulse that artists of all kinds have to stay connected to their audiences. So is this going to be part of NIDA's curriculum, part of the development of its curriculum in the future?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think that what we learned was really incredible to keep. And what we're doing at the moment is we've actually got a number of what I'm calling emerging technology experiments. So it's almost like giving people permission, or giving the staff and the students permission to create new work. We have a very packed schedule, but even so, they're managing to, for example, we're doing a motion capture sort of experiment with the dance work. We're working with some Unreal Engine methodologies in terms of creating some screen content. And we're just trying to, I suppose, enable all of the students and staff to really imagine what the possibilities are with these new platforms, because it's not like we still of course want to do live performance and, you know, with face-to-face engagement, but what we need to do is ensure that we provide opportunities for all the students to engage across the different, all the different opportunities for performance making in all its various guises. And really, we're wanting them to invent the future. We're wanting them to lead the future, to come up with new ideas, and the future for sure will have some technology-enabled opportunities. Understanding technology and competence is a core skill set, I think. So, you know, there's reading, there's writing, there's video making, but really understanding technology and being able to kind of imagine new futures, as artists often do so well with technologies, is really exciting for the performing arts and arts more broadly.
Great, thank you, Liz. Jessica, turning to you, the disruption for iconic live music events such as Splendour in the Grass has been profound. And you've also had to very recently cancel your Splendour in the City program due to the Sydney lockdown. But you do have an exciting event coming up in a couple of weeks. Can you take us through your plans for Splendour XR?
Sure. You know, and what a time to be hosting something like this. At the very least, it's COVID proof. And I think that was sort of very much the thinking from the start. To say our industry has been crippled by the pandemic is an understatement. We're not able to operate in the way that we have to date. And at the very early stages, I remember there were a lot of artists performing, doing benefits online, and you could see how the music community was trying to connect with people. I was challenged around putting a festival online, and I just couldn't, I just didn't think it was the right medium. How do you know, ultimately festivals people buy to see the artists, but really they're the background to people connecting, a community connecting. So how do you actually present that in a meaningful way in a digital space? And I had this kind of, I remember words like create and innovate being sort of bandied around, and I was really frustrated because I couldn't see how we could necessarily do this. It was all about audiences and people being there in real life. And so I really challenged myself, and it was an interesting time because I was watching how my children were connecting, and they were, you know, they were gaming with their friends, but really the game was a backdrop to them connecting and hanging out together. It's like the hang after school, right? And I thought that was really interesting. And then also how people were being forced to use technology to connect. And I thought, well, how can we apply that to a festival environment? And I think and a Splendour fan actually did a Minecraft build of the festival, and our whole team watched it, and we were really awed by the emotion that came from just watching you know, a rebuild of our show. So all of those things sort of came together, and I was like, well, okay, how can we bring a live festival to life online? And it was about an emotional connection. And I think rather than being a passive viewer, how can they participate in an immersive experience? So, and this was in April, late April last year, I think, April. And so it was very much around people being able to hang with their friends, albeit in different parts of the world, to be able to communicate, meet new people, and also be able to content skip. So having lots of different channels to keep people engaged, that you weren't just sitting there watching TV. So what we came up with was rebuilding our festival in a photorealistic way online with a creative overlay, and you can build your virtual self and you can go into that space and you can meet people and you can hang out with your friends. And performances being really dynamic too, like talking to the artist about how do they creatively want to appear in world. And that could be anything from playing a live venue, depending on where they are in the world, playing in a studio. In one case, we've got an artist who's performing on top of the Gaudi building in Barcelona. So there are so many, the content is so rich for our audience. At the time that we were concepting it, Travis Scott turned up in Fortnite. And I think what was really interesting was the evolution between gaming and music. And so then our big challenge became around, can you commercialize this? Can you get people to pay for an experience that they've probably been, to date, it's been free. So I guess that's what we've come up with. Splendour XR is on the 24th and 25th of July. We're incredibly excited about it. It's a huge project, and we look forward to seeing how it will be received.
So many fascinating things there, Jessica. You've gone from being a skeptic to an enthusiast about it. In the spirit of that is, I know you and we will learn a lot from Splendour XR in the coming weeks, but is your sense this will be part of the future? We heard Raj say earlier that part of the purpose of what they were doing was to bring people back into the live experience. Do you think that there is, given how different festivals work dynamically, that might be part of your future as well?
Well, assuming it's successful, the idea would be that it would be a bolt-on to the real festival in the future. It does allow us a global audience. It's great on so many levels, and you could even add potentially performers to the digital version that couldn't actually be at the festival in real life. I think I think it would be naive to think that digital is not a future new revenue stream for artists. I don't think it's necessarily found its feet, but you'd be living in the dark ages if you didn't think that it was here to stay in some way, shape or form.
Right, thank you. Jennifer, if I can turn to you now. We've seen a tremendous amount of digital adaptation and innovation over recent months. Looking ahead, where do you think we'll be in another 18 months, and what's on the agenda for NBN Co?
I think from a personal thing, I hope I'm at Splenda in some point in the future again. But I think that what we're seeing now is that hybrid model where people are trying to find a way to preserve what they had in the past with audience, but also, as Jessica mentioned, create bolt-ons and really develop that other commercialized market. I think this is going to continue. I think, where I'm seeing the virtual reality opportunities come up in sports, they're laying a great roadmap of commercialization that hopefully the arts can pick up. I mean, you can now join on court with a VR headset and play and, purchase the shoes you see a player wearing. I think there's lots of opportunities to be explored for the arts. I think at NBN, as the nation's digital needs accelerated, so too did our plans to evolve our network and increase the capabilities. I think NBN have really embraced being the nation's digital backbone, and this included the creation of the $300 million co-investment fund to states, local and federal governments to provide further growth. I'm hoping that accompanied with the strategy that from an art standpoint I've been working on in the last year to really help drive digital literacy and digital capability, that we're creating that ecosystem for people to really tap into all of those pillars. A, strong connectivity, and then B, both the ability and skill set to play in that space and really work out how they can enhance the cultural experience from it.
Thank you, Jennifer. So this is a question I think for all of us to think about. What support exists for researchers in this industry, such as, say, residencies and fellowships, seeing the importance of running the research almost concurrently to implementing the results of said research? Let's start with you, Liz. What do you think is vital now in terms of supporting this kind of activity that we have discovered through COVID?
So there's many things, but I think that fundamental is actually supporting people to see the opportunity. So whilst many do, I think that we're still kind of getting over a bit of a feeling of we're losing something, but we're actually not, we're just gaining something else. So I think that's really important. I think also just an understanding about what's possible. So I think it's fantastic having forums like this, and I congratulate you for having it today. But I think case studies and examples of what the future can look like. I think it's also about bringing in a range of different industries as well. So I think obviously a collaboration with technology industries, and I think that we also need to think about, well, what role can the arts play in terms of about imagining new futures for different technologies as well. And I think there's a big opportunity there. But I think, knowledge, I think it's really important that we are able to share our knowledge with each other. And also I think that we can create, I suppose, focused times for people to actually have kind of creative challenges where we go, this is a potential opportunity with X software, for example, and we put out a challenge, we give some idea about what things people have done previously. But I think that the wonderful thing about creative people is that you give them a challenge and they'll come up with something which just blows your mind, which you would never have thought of beforehand. So I think sort of opening up the dialogue with creative people to be at the kind of at the forefront of developing new experiences for audiences, and actually thinking about their skill set and their creativity and applying it to those challenges will open up a whole bunch of new opportunities, I think.
Thank you, Liz. And Jen, could I turn to you to see whether you've got any further thoughts about the future support?
Yeah, I think one of the incredible important things that's come out of the pattern makers work that you guys so skillfully put on this year is creating that baseline. I think really understanding where we're at right now so that we can create the best building blocks moving forward for everybody to build their literacy, their capability, fill those skills gaps. I think for me at a practical level, what I'm seeing in the arts as opposed to some of the other key segments of our economy is that it is going to be crucial for us to ensure that there's digital resilience within organizations and artists and content creators' businesses, ensuring that they deeply understand and build towards having strong digital strategies. And from there, that they understand that they're going to need to resource those. As you know, several of our panelists discussed today, it's can be an expensive proposition. So we want to make sure that they recognize that and have all the tools they need to potentially broaden their audience reach and maximize commercialization because of it.
Thank you, Jen. And Jessica, any final thoughts there?
Yeah, I think our younger generation, they're almost born with an iPhone. So I think the challenge for us is that there's a huge cultural shift, and technology isn't is very the young people are very comfortable in technology, and I think for us who've been doing and presenting in the way that we have for such a long time, I think the challenge is actually with us. And so understanding technology and what is what is possible and how we can apply that to our industry, I think is something that's incredibly important. I also think that, and I speak from the music industry perspective, but the artist's traditional way of presenting as, a musician singing songs, I think that is developing and evolving where they're needing to become multifaceted. They're creating content. They're having to challenge themselves on a whole range of different platforms. Today's artist is probably going to be different to an artist in 10 years' time and what's expected of them. So I think we need to get on board and start imagining what that future could look like. Because the young kids are way ahead of us.
Well, terrific, Jessica. And yes, I was impressed by the kind of cracking of the code for the Future Digital Festival came from your children, if I understand it correctly, and observing what they were doing. And of course, it loops back to the kind of work now being done at NIDA to prepare and develop our skills and talents of artists in the future. Another one for you to think about quickly, especially for small to medium organisations, digital platforms and strategies do feel daunting, complex, financially unattainable. Many have spoken about the necessity of arts organisations to come together to gain access to digital platforms. Jane, if I can ask you, do you have any particular thoughts on this?
I think what we've seen come out of this is that there are these really thought leaders in this space growing. And I think that ensuring that everybody has the tools of the trade to participate in that, we will see that grow. The platform thing, I don't think that we lack the audience for it. I think that the demand is there. So it's really just about ensuring that we can keep the industry up to date with all of those learnings that they're going to need to actually be able to record content, work out how it's going to be delivered, and then find and source those existing thought leaders in that platform space and get it out there.
Terrific, Jen. Jessica, any thoughts?
I think Jen's covered it really.
Yeah, and Liz, from your point of view, particularly developing the artists of the future.
So, I mean, just linking in a couple of the thoughts that have come up here, I really think that we need to think about co-creating the future with the kids that are becoming teenagers and are young adults. And we actually need to, and I think that's one of the things I've learned at NIDA, is that a lot of the solutions that we found in terms of dealing with the pandemic and the Digital Theatre Festival and everything comes from the students. Like, they've got lots of ideas and they're just open and, you know, they're taking things in all the time. So I think that what we actually need to do is we actually need to think of ourselves as collaborators with the next generation of artists. And we need to, you know, work with them, listen to them really, really deeply, and then we need to enable them to co-create, co-design, imagine, you know, the digital futures. I mean, our artists can be the co-creators, the co-designers of the new digital economies and opportunities if we kind of let go of thinking that we know everything. We need to listen hard to the people that are willing to try things out and to experiment, and we need to ensure that our education supports that inquiry, that creative courage, and that passion that just comes through anyway.
Thank you so much, Liz, and also Jessica and Jen. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you over this half hour. Well, it's time to wrap up. I suppose if I've heard one thing through this 3 hours consistently is we can't do this alone. It is about creating the best possible environment for creative collaborations and connections, and that gives us at the Australia Council, our colleagues at the Office for the Arts, the Minister himself, a lot to think about in coming weeks and months. I would once again like to thank the Minister for joining us today and NBN for partnering with us on such an important, vital topic, and thank Roz and Jen and all of our panellists for those 2 important sessions. Thank you to our wonderful Auslan interpreters who have again worked so closely with us to make today a success. I'd also like to thank Fourth Wall, our delivery partners, who have been working so closely and at speed over the last week in challenging circumstances to bring this alive with us today. Finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank you all for joining us around the country online and being a part of this special broadcast. I look forward to joining you in person and indeed online again soon. Goodbye.